Happy Saturday, everyone. Hello, hello. How's everyone doing today? It's a good weekend. It's a good start to the weekend. Hello. Hey, Stacy. Hey, Zoe. How's it going? Hello, Wendy. Welcome to Asked and Answered, the first one of this year. Hard to believe that. I think this is, what is this, our sixth one, Mario? Is that what I said? I don't remember. I think it's our sixth one. We did 5 of them last year. A lot of fun. Hello, Zoe. Hello to everyone. Hi, Kath. I just saw Kath pop through. Hey, Jana. So yes, it is. It's very. I haven't done one in a while, and I was saying tomorrow, I'm like, okay, like the holiday kind of makings over. We did Valentine, we did Easter, and I thought Asked and Answered would be good. If you're new to this series, Asked and Answered is a series. You can find the others on my YouTube channel. There's an actual playlist for this, and what it is, it's just kind of an interactive Q&A demo relating to a product. We've done them on, I think, Distress Basics, Distress Embossing Glaze. We've done texture paste. We did alcohol ink. We did sprays. Today is all about paint. So if you have questions relating to Distress paint, that's what it's all about. Some of it might be conversational like this. Some might require a demo, and I'm kind of set up for, I don't know what, but I've got paint and products. And the whole goal of this is so you guys can become more familiar and more comfortable with the product that we're talking about in this topic. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So you can ask questions here. Mario will read them to me if I don't see him in the chat. Hey, Kuber. Hey, Marina. Hey, Nikki. Oh, I see Ben from Art from the Heart is here. So yeah, it's just your chance to learn, but more than anything, learn what you need to learn. I do have some basics that I'm going to cover. So if you're like, what makes it different and all that, I'll cover that when we start. Other than that, we're just going to have fun. Hey, Steph. Barbara Yaya. Are we ready, Mario? Doing good? This, we're pros at this now. Even though even though we haven't done this in a while, it's like, yeah, we're pros at this, right? I was like, you're gonna get more than your half of the face in there. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Nice to see everyone. My gosh.
Yeah.
I see everyone just going by.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun Saturday. You ready to kick it off?
Ready.
I'm ready to go. Oh, Scrapbook Central is here. Stampers Anonymous. Okay.
Have fun, you guys.
Here we go. So we're going to start talking about distress paint, and I'll go through what makes it different, the properties. I'm even going to share some of my favorite techniques, which that's obviously my favorite part of this whole series, is just showing you technique. But here's the exciting news that I'm going to talk about, and I'm trying not to confuse anyone, but at the same time, I certainly want to kind of go through and, I don't know, explain this. So let's just talk about the paint itself. In 2013, Distress Paint was launched, and this was us adding this medium to the Distress line. Distress Paint is a very unique paint. Yes, it is an acrylic paint. Yes, you can use it like traditional craft paint, but if you're not into technique, I would say, other than the colors, Distress Paint is not going to really wow you, okay? Because you can just buy craft paint and be happy painting it. Distress Paint really is for technique. I think that's where it shines, but also the palette. In 2016, it started out in dabbers, but in 2016, we went to the flip tops. So if you have Distress Paint in dabbers and you want to change to flip tops, or vice versa, if you have flip tops and you like some of the dabbers, you can find replacement flip tops and replacement dabbers, typically at retailers or, of course, on Ranger's website. So if you wanted to switch them out, I prefer flip top. You'll see why. Then in 2021, we retired, and I say we, I'm gonna put them on the spot. Ranger retired 28 colors of Distress Paint, these 28 colors. And this was the first time they actually retired colors in an existing product category in Distress, because we've had categories in the world of Distress come and go, crackle, paint, markers, all sorts of things. But this was kind of a big hit. Then in 2023, I convinced him to bring back some colors, but we only brought back 20 colors. And then it was a limited release. So if you guys remember that from 3 years ago, they came out in bundles. People were like, I got to get them. I got to do this. Then I have to say, this happened this year. We launched our labels for Distress products. So, whether it's for ink pads or sprays or minis or all of that. And this really sparked a whole different group of many of you that were labeling your product, putting stuff away in your craft room or your studio. And you notice that you had all of these leftover round labels when you were doing your paints. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for speaking up and using your voice and saying, wait a minute, I'm missing some colors. What's going on here? So I've been talking to Ranger since 2023 about like, hey guys, why, do we really have to do the limited thing? Like, how hard is it going to be? You're a US manufacturer. Can't you just make the product even if you're making it in small batches? So here's the great news. The Distress Paint palette is back to stay. It's not a limited time. It's not a one and done. It wasn't a marketing ploy 3 years ago. It was really logistics, but as with anything, efficiency comes a long way in manufacturing. So Ranger's bringing back not just the 20 colors that we did in 2023, but all 28 colors. So I saw comments about Spice Marmalade. Yes, that's back. So the entire palette of colors in Distress Paint is back for good. Now, as far as colors, okay, there are more colors in Distress Paint than in our ink pads, and that's because it includes metallic. So really, in the world of Distress Paint, there are 75 colors, which would be the 72 regular Distress colors, white, which is picket fence, and 3 metallics, okay? So you don't have to rush out. If you already bought them last time, you have them, just know now that maybe you'll use them. And if they run out, you can now replace them. And this is something that's going to be ongoing. So a huge shout out to Ranger. Thank you so much. I do understand that it is hard for a manufacturer that if something doesn't sell because people aren't using it, it's hard to keep on the shelves, especially something like paint, because paint does have a shelf life. You need to use it. But yes, the colors are back. So I'm going to focus not only just on these colors. I mean, it's nice that I can play with these, but I can also bring in other colors. We'll include working with sprays and inks and all sorts of stuff. So we're just going to have just a good time with it. So that to me is really, really, it's exciting. Question, paint, swatch, strip size, the ones Tim cuts from 8.5 by 11. I didn't really have any paint swatches for this on this one. Typically my swatches are pretty skinny that I do, like when I do inks or glaze or whatever, but you can make a swatch size whatever you want. If you're asking about this paper strip, let me put this down on my mat. It looks to be 1 1/4 by 4 1/4. So that's what these are that I typically, and that's kind of my new go-to swatches. Like I said, I haven't done them for paints, but I think that's going to be our weekend thing, Mario. We'll do some swatches. I did talk about it. I'm like, we should do that before the live, and then of course just time, and I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that. I have done swatches on bigger pieces before, but that's more for texture pastes and things like that. So I would say for paint, especially if you're just going to do like brush stroke, that's what I would do. And this of course is all just chopped from an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Okay. All right. So let's go through and just talk about paint. We'll talk about properties. Maybe you can understand the colors a little bit and what make them unique. And like I said, I will certainly watch, but yeah, I wanted to get that fun announcement out there. It wasn't really a new release. So I said to Ranger, like, I don't want to do like this big wah new release. There's many retailers that have actually had stock of those retired colors from 3 years ago because they bought so many of them and they've had them all along, believe it or not. So just exciting that it's back. I'm putting paint all around my glass mat. So if you hear things fall, that's on me. Okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, now I don't have to ration paint. You're absolutely right. Okay. So what makes Distress Paint? Well, let's just go through some of the basics and I'll get into technique. The thing to know is that this is a very fluid paint. Okay. So when it comes to the paint itself, you do need to shake it. There's a mixing ball in there, but every paint color has a different viscosity. So if you notice that some paints are a little thicker when you shake it, some are a little bit more watery, it all has to do with the colorant in here, because unlike typical acrylic paints that you find at the craft store, these don't have fillers. These are designed for a technique to be water reactive, to marbleize, to do all of the cool things. So it's just different. We get asked all the time, like, what is the shelf life of, you ask like, what is the shelf life of any product? There is no way to determine a shelf life of an ink pad, of a spray, of a jar of paste, or of a bottle of paint, because so many variables. Have you unwrapped it? Have you taken off? There's a styrofoam seal in there when you open a new bottle of paint. Are you in a warm climate, a cool climate, a humid climate, a dry climate? Are you storing this in like an attic, in a closet? Is it warm? Is it in direct sunlight? All of those are going to impact the shelf life of paint. Shelf life of paint is not going to be weeks, months, or even years. It's going to be longer than that, but it could be shorter depending on all of those factors that I just mentioned. So my suggestion to you is use it. If you find your paint gets a little thick or a little thicker than what you want, it is a water-based medium, so you could add some water. I would recommend adding distilled water just so you're not adding any type of stuff into your paint. But yes, you can make it as fluid as you want, okay? So, and I did see a question about purple. If you have purple paints that go weird, and when I say weird, meaning you haven't used it and it's weird, this is a known thing at Ranger. We don't know why, and it's happened in my paints and Diane's paints. But if you have a purple paint that just looks like sludge, I would suggest contacting Ranger and getting a replacement. Because, I mean, it's happened to me where we're not talking like a dried out paint. We're talking it looks like, what would you say, Mario? Like cottage cheese? It's just weird. And that's just because the pigments used in any of the purples, it often happens with wilted violet and seedless preserves for some reason. The other ones aren't affected as much. But if you're able to reconstitute it with water, like put in some water and stir it up, that's one thing. But if it becomes like gelatinous, that's a Ranger thing. So you can contact them. So I did see that question from Zoe. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've never had a brown paint dry out either, Zoe. You're totally right. Okay, let's see. These are open. I just wanted to make sure. Because when you first get your paint and you unwrap the shrink, you do need to take off the cap and there'll be like a little styrofoam seal.
Sorry,
that's what I was. Then Mario took them off for me. So thanks. So you peel that off and then you're ready to go. The cool thing about flip top is it's got a little hinge, kind of locks up there in place, and there's a little spout. So unlike, again, flat topped paints, I just prefer the spout because I get more control over there and you don't have paint kind of going all over the place. But again, whatever's going to work for you. If I'm just going to drip this out just to show you, it's just a couple of drips. So you can see it is fluid when it comes out, okay? But it is paint. It's going to be opaque. It is a pigment. And this is where the colorant factor comes into play, where it's like, you know, so how does this compare to X medium, let's just say? So if you were looking at as far as the color value, this would have the opacity of a distress oxide minus the oxidized finish, okay? So when it comes to colors, especially in the world of distress, translucent and opacity really impacts a color. So does it coordinate with distress ink? Yes. Does it coordinate with crayons and pencils and all of those things? Yes. But because it is 100% pigment, it's going to have a very rich opacity to that color, okay? And you can use it on so many different surfaces. The most important thing when it comes to paints is understanding the very principle that makes this magic for me. And that is the fact that distress paint is water reactive when wet. And you'll see some of the techniques. We do crazy things when it hits water, but then it's permanent when dry. So this is the only distress reactive medium that is permanent when dry. Because I don't want to get into archival inks because that's really just it's a completely different type of ink. It's an oil ink and it's not water reactive at all. But I'm saying in a medium, like compared to spray stain, oxide spray, distress ink, distress oxide pads, distress paint will do all of those cool things with water, but once it dries, it is permanent, which means we can then add things over the top of it. We can layer, we can stamp, we can spritz, we can do all the cool things, and that's what I wanted to share in the demos, okay? That, to me, is magic. And I'm gonna talk about texture paste. I'll talk about some of my favorite tools as far as, you know, using a blending tool or a brush, or because it really just depends on the technique. There's never gonna be that one answer of like, this is the best way to apply this product. Absolutely not. It has to be with what you want to do with it, okay? All right, let's go for it. Hey, Mario, could you do me a favor? Can you grab my towel over there?
Yeah.
Sorry. I have paper towels, but I don't have my cotton towel, and well, you guys know it's gonna create some little muck for me. I'm gonna thank you. Thank you very much. You can work directly on your glass mat if you want, but I'm going to work on just my craft mat. So if you have a media mat from Tonic, you know, that little piece on the side, you can use that. It's the same material as this. This is just a craft mat that has like rubber corners that are weighted. So this is still going to grip to my glass. Don't worry about air bubbles because this is going to come off. And it comes in a couple sizes. So I'm just going to use the small one just so maybe I can keep a little bit of glass open if I need it. But there are mats that, I'll pull this out. There is a mat that is sized to cover an entire glass mat. This is actually the travel size. So if you had a travel glass mat, this would cover it end to end. And then of course, this is the other one that's, you can see it's massive. So if I wanted to cover the whole surface, I could use this. And remember, this is a work surface, so it's going to get scuffed and stained and all the good things that a well-used craft mat should, okay? So let's talk basics. And of course, for basics, I am going to do brown because, well, brown is my happy place. Shakety shake. So again, you just want to shake it up If you have trouble shaking, you can get yourself one of those little shakers. I don't even think where is mine? Because normally I have it with my alcohol inks. There it is, in my alcohol ink drawer right there. I'm not going to use it, but I'll just talk to you about it.
You want
Hand
to
you
plug
that
in?
thing. No, I'm not going to use it. But you can do a little shaking machine, any kind of shaking machine. These don't need to be shaken crazy, but if you have a shaker, you can put that on and mix it up. I would say that like you can mix it up in probably 15 seconds. That's it, okay? But if you have trouble shaking, definitely get something like that. Okay, so let's just go through the basics. I've done this demo so many times, but I think that's the best way to really show you how it works, okay? And I have seen some questions on a gel plate. I haven't worked, could you believe it? I've never worked on a gel plate. I know it's shocking. I want to, I plan to, but it's one of those things that I know once I start using a gel plate with any medium, I will be like down the rabbit hole, immersed in the world of gel plate. So I'll get there. But yes, these do work on gel plate. They work different than acrylic paints because they're way more fluid. So they tend to bead up and do all sorts of weird things. But yes, they work, okay? Here we go. So first thing I'm going to do is just work on a piece of paper. As far as paper, in the instance of paint, anything goes. It could be a tag, it could be watercolor paper, it could be craft paper, it could be whatever. The only thing that you need to remember is that because if you're going to add water to it, you want to make sure that your paper can handle water. So these happen to be the mixed media heavy stock tags from Ranger, so they're designed to get wet. But in a journal, it's going to work as well. So there you go. Let's see, Joy said, I bought a gel plate. I have one too. I think I actually have 4 of them because then I was like, oh, that's a cute size. I'll probably use that. And I've never used any of them. Wild, isn't it? Okay. So here I'm just going to take some paint. We're just going to do a couple of drops just so you can see if I drip the paint. And you do have control with that flip top of just, see, like when you flip it over, it's not just pouring out. You do need to give it a little squeeze. I'll just hold it on the side, see? And then you can drip it on there. So it gives you really great control having a flip top, in my opinion. Okay. Water reactive properties. When I spray this with water, you're going to see that water reactive that I'm talking about. And so when I say that, it doesn't just mean that the color is just going to like, it reacts. It actually wicks. It does what distress ink and distress oxide does, which is it moves away from itself and it creates that wicking property. By putting paint directly on a surface though, you're always going to have this really dark spot because remember, paint is 100% pigment as far as its colorant. So it's going to be super opaque. But I can put some water down here and let's get some of this stuff to like move. So I'll just take that and I'll just kind of drag it across here. This is why I'm working on a craft mat because I want all that beaded up stuff. But you can see where I dripped, it's going to be pretty hard to get that to kind of move out of the way and not be this solid area. And I'm going to be okay with that. You know, this is still going to be kind of a cool, like coffee stained tag. Let's just set that aside. Let's take another one. So I have paint down here. Now we've got paint with water. And you could add more water if you want. You can decide like how much moisture you want down there. I'll just take another tag. And now I'm just going to swipe through. So you would play with it very much like ink, but it's going to react very different in the final outcome. Okay. If I want to build it up, I can tap it and build up some color intensity there. See, because wherever you see like more of that, like right there, can you see the little spots a little bit darker than over here? So I know that there's more, I'll say concentrated paint. So if I just go right in that spot, it's just going to pick up that concentrated color. I like that. I'll set that one aside. And then we'll just do one more just to clean it up. And again, it doesn't matter whether this was a tag or a sheet of paper or your journal through it or anything like that. I'm just swiping through for now. Okay, I'm going to clean this up real quick. This, I'm just going to wipe it up. You can use I just use a flour sack towel, so you can use a cotton cloth, you can use paper towel, you can mop it up with other papers, whatever you want to do. But here's where we have to remember the properties of paint. Okay, reactive when wet, permanent when dry. So right now, these are all wet. So that means if I go in with more water, so here I'm just going to take my sprayer and instead of spraying, I'm just going to slowly squeeze the trigger to get those little splatters of water. So as I do that on these tags, you're going to see that when the water hits this, it almost becomes, well, like cellular. Like the paint wants to move out of the way, almost like paint marbling, but not really. Because it's not like that. It just gives you I don't know, kind of that effect. And I'll hold them closer to the camera just so you can see what I'm talking about when I added water. See what I mean? Like when you add water, the paint starts to, well, marbleize, and you can move it around. You can do all sorts of things. The longer you let it do its thing, the more cool reactive stuff it'll do. Meaning you can set this aside, but you can also dry it with a heat tool. It is heat stable. So if you want it to dry it, it's not going to blister and peel off like a fruit roll-up. It's going to be great. But in this case, I could actually take some water and go into that spot. Remember, see, there was like some, like right here as well. There's just some exposed tag. And if I don't want just plain tag, I can just add water and that paint will just fill in the blanks while it's wet. And you could do this as much as you want while it's wet. But once it's dry, this will no longer react. So I'm just going to set these. I'm just going to move this a little bit. Just want to, because see, I like just taking some of that sludge and just bringing that over because I think it's going to give it a kind of a cool look. If you don't like, say like right here where you're like, oh, I don't like that it just kind of stopped midway. Just hit it with a little water, move it. Okay, so I'm going to take these, I'm going to set them aside to dry just because I'd rather you see what it looks like when it really has a chance to do its thing. But if you wanted to use a heat tool, oh, there's a little bristle from a brush. If you wanted to use a heat tool, you absolutely could. All right, let me set these over here. I'm just going to put them on a paper towel for now. So this just in itself was, you guys remember? 1, 2, 3 drops of paint. 3 drops, not big blobs, drips of paint. So in a perfect world, let's say you didn't want this first looking tag. Let's say you're like, hey, you know what? I love this, but I don't want these dark spots. Well, you could have done the same thing by just applying your paint to your mat, spraying it with water, mixing it with your fingers, and then going in and doing all of your stuff, which is what we're going to do next. Okay. So as from a colorant perspective, because there is so much colorant in this paint and it's water reactive, you can create some very ink or oxide worthy backgrounds with your paint. Although it won't oxidize and although it's not as vivid as ink, it's pretty darn cool. All right, so let's go in and do some marbleize. And we're going to talk about different surfaces as well. Will this happen on printer paper? The thing about printer paper is it's really not meant to get wet. So if you added that to printer paper, I think it would probably turn into toilet paper by the time it was done. And I'm only saying that because the paper, you saw how much water I was adding, right? That paper would have just dissolved and disintegrated. So if you weren't using as much water, absolutely you could paint on printer paper. But the surface, that to get that reaction, it should be water stable. That's going to be your best bet, is having a water stable thing. See, I never mean to be, look, sometimes things kind of out of my mouth and surprise myself, but that's really what I think. It's just going to be, you know, just that, like, it'll fall apart right in your hands. So I didn't mean it would look like poop. Gosh. Oh boy, my brain. This brain, I tell you. Okay, now let's just talk about marbling. We're going to do some colors, and I like to play with different colors. So we'll do like a cool palette, and then maybe we'll even do a little warm. And you could, of course, mix them. It's fine. So here I'm just going to we'll just do a couple of drops of that. It's tumbled glass. We're going to do a little stormy sky. Will the color dry the same color, or will it dry darker like other acrylic paints? Just like other acrylic paints. It will dry darker. Any medium dries darker than what it is wet, including an ink pad. A translucent ink will dry darker. Just depends on your surface, but yes. This one is still we'll let this dry and then we'll do that swipe test as well. How do you seal it for outside? It is permanent when dry, so you do not need to seal it. If you want to seal it, you could use whatever sealer you would seal, especially if you're going to use it as a rock outside, then I would get an outdoor sealer because it's going to, you know, this isn't meant to like paint your mailbox, but I get what you're saying. If it's going to be in the outside elements, then I would find a sealer that is specifically designed for that. But on a typical craft or creative project, you don't need to seal this because it's permanent when dry. All right. Oh yeah, Stormy Sky is yummy. Stormy Sky has actually evolved. Probably a few years ago, I shifted the color back to it. And I know there's a couple people that were like, oh, I like the original one. But Stormy Sky, the thing about Distress, I mean, we've had this palette for 22 years now. That's insane. And in that time, colors shift for manufacturing, even though they try to match a standard, you know, it's always to the eye. And so everybody's eye is a little different. And in all those years, like it could shift like such a small amount. And then you go back and revisit it 7 years later, you're like, whoa, that color shifted a little bit and we dial it back. So Stormy Sky was one of those, so it was good. Microglaze, I see a question. If you're at, I just need a more of a question than just like microglaze. Just let me know what your question is so I can answer that, and I'll definitely try to fill in the blanks of that. So I've got drips of paint on here. I did see a question on Spritz, and yes, I will demo that. I'll show you Spritz. So now I added water to this. This is so we don't necessarily get those big splotches. If you don't mind the splotches, you could put your paper right into this. But if you want to try to eliminate those splotches, you could take your fingers and you could just dab into that. And I'm just going to wipe this off while it's wet, because it's not permanent if it's not dry. And then I'll go in just with a little bit of paper. So your paper could be wet or dry as well. I'll show you two different ways. So this, we're going to take watercolor cardstock. We're going to work on it dry. Let's go right into this. We're just going to pick up colors. So what's unique about distress paint, especially even when you're swiping it through, is that the colors maintain their integrity, which is shocking because you would think by having these colors we would create mud. Well, they don't. They kind of maintain that. They would mix if you actually mixed them together in a circular motion, but dragging this through, even if I need to put a little bit more water down here. If I drag this through, it's just going to maintain its integrity and start revealing layers below it. It's very wild how distress paint works, but that's what I was saying at the beginning, is that this is a technique paint, okay? That's the important thing about this paint, is that it is a pigment paint. So there we go. Beautiful. Oh, will it resist with microglaze? Not really. The paint is opaque, so microglaze is more for inks. So it won't actually resist with microglaze. So great question. Probably better with that. How do the paints interact with watercolor pencils? You can do watercolor pencils directly on top of the dried paint. It would be beautiful. All right, we're just going to let this one dry. I like it. See, I mean, you can see all those colors peeking through because that first swipe I had the blue, and then when I did the purple, it kind of comes through. So let's just let this sit here for a second. You're going to get what you see. So right now I see a lot of sludge because I was dragging in different directions. Because like I said, if you mix, it will mix the color. But if you swipe through, it just keeps its color integrity for those swipes. Kind of magical. I'm not really sure how that works, but it just does. So if you don't want sludge, then don't swipe through sludge. So let's do another one. These are cool colors. Let's see. Do I have a pink? I have a pink over here. I'm going to pull in a pink. Let's do a little kitsch flamingo. Could be picked raspberry, but let's do that. Nice. Okay. Someone said your hands are magic. They never get dirty, because I am a chronic cleaner. Like, I have a tray of water right off camera, and when a medium is wet, you just remember, it could be ink, it could be paste, it could be paint. If you clean your hands while the medium is wet, it will come right off. If you let it dry on your hands, like collage medium or whatever, then you're like going in for scrub time. So that's just me. I always feel like I need to clean it off really quick. Sometimes I don't, though, you know? Okay, little saltwater taffy. So I just did a drip and a drip. Just wanted to do we'll just do some different colors. We're gonna do a little spice marmalade. So each time I just give it a quick little shake. That's gonna be good. Ooh, that was a double drip right there. Let's see, what yellow do I have? Let's do a little fossilized amber. That'll be nice. And just do a drip of that. Fossilized amber is a little thicker. And just for fun, let's throw in, let's not. No, I'm going to throw in a little peacock feathers just because. Okay. Just because it's going to be fun that way. So now, water on this. This time though, I'm just going to add a little bit of water to the back of the paper. Why? Just so you know that you can work on a wet or a dry surface with this paint. By adding water to the surface, here I'm going to do that again, I don't have to do the mixing because this paint is going to react on contact. Okay? So instead of getting those dots that we did on the tag because it was dry and it soaked right in, as soon as the paint hit that wet paper, it started to do its thing. So now I can just move some of this color around, and you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Just let it be. Just enjoy that background. This could be something that you could stamp on, you can die cut. Just sometimes things get overworked. Obviously, if you want to move stuff around, a little bit of water will help, you know, move some of that color. But at the same time, if you overwork it, you know, you're going to kind of see, I love that. Look at that little striation of color. You're going to lose the magic of it, in my opinion. Only my opinion. You do you. Okay, I need like a baker.
You want to try?
I need like a baking rack over here. Okay, I'm going to let that one side because that's just really good. Thanks, Mario. I'm just going to put that over here. I just want stuff to dry just so you understand like the time. So let's go back to this one. See how this is really started to dry? Beautiful. I love that look, because if you're familiar with inks or oxides or sprays, you know that you might occasionally get something like this, but at the same time, it's really hard to control getting these bright spaces when you're adding dark colors of ink because everything wants to just move together. No, I'm good. Thank you. I put it right there. Okay. So that to me is what I like about working with paints if I'm going for like those marbly colorized backgrounds. Okay. So could I still work in here? Yeah. I'll add some water to this. I don't want this because I already know what that looks like. So let's just edit. Let edit. And if there's something else that you wanted to add, if you're like, oh, but I want a little bit more pink, okay, we can add to this. But right now I'm just going to leave it as is. And let's go in with the tag. And let's just swipe through that color. Beautiful. I think it is. Some people might be like, he's just saying that, but that looks like puke. I love it. It's very pastel, very nice. So it is just about looking down and seeing what your palette is. Now that doesn't look good at all because I don't see any pink and I don't see any peacock feathers. So I'm not going to get any of that color. I'm going to get a big pile of muck. So don't want that. So there you go. So I'm going to clean this up and I'll bring in that other piece just so you can see like the difference in what you can create with those paints, those vivid colors. And I still have time to manipulate this. As long as it's wet, if I want to bring some of that color down, I can just add some water to it. Maybe I'll pull some of that pink down. I really like that blue little veining, so I don't want to mess with that. But see, I can still bring some of that medium wherever I want it while it's drying and use a heat tool. Beautiful. Set that over there. All right. So drying. Drying time, again, depends on where you live, but if you want this to dry and you're in a hurry, you could certainly go in and, yeah, I just saw Tattered Rose is my favorite. That came back. Mine too. I love Tattered Rose, but this one, I have to say, Old Paper will forever have my heart because it is that color that probably in my career I got the most grief for. Because remember, Old Paper was one of the OGs, the original color in 2004. And so people bought it and they're like, it's green. I'm like, well, yeah, it's beigey green. It's got a green tint to it, but it's not really green. I just love it. There's something about it because it is that creamy, beigey hint of green old paper. Like, looks like pages out of an old book that aren't really cream anymore. They're just kind of, I love that. So happy it's back in paint. All right. I just hit that with a heat tool. I'm going to dry this off of my mat. Same thing on the glass mat. If you wipe it off while it's wet, it's good. If it dries, you can use a blade to scrape it off because it is acrylic paint, or you can just use hand sanitizer. If you ever have any paint that dries on anything you don't want, maybe you have paint dried on a stencil, maybe you have paint that's dried on a brush, maybe you have paint that's dried on a stamp or on glass, you can just use hand sanitizer, put it on there, work it in, and then it'll rinse right out. So just remember that if you get it to where you don't like it. But there's our background. I love how that looks. And this is where things get really interesting because we can do some other things. Let's play with this one right now before we move on to some other techniques. I love Asked and Answered because I'm watching the chat. I see some Old Paper fans. I love it. And that's okay. I mean, that's why we have such a big palette, 72 colors of distress, because some people really love the grunge and some people like a little bit brighter color. So I just see Zoe when Pumice Stone, she bought 15 bottles. As long as they're sealed, they're probably going to last you a while because as long as you don't take off that styro seal, you should be okay with it. All right, I'm just going to dry this. So see how I have that wet paint right there? Just want to make sure I get that dry. Another thing, if you're drying, try to keep your paper off the surface, anything, whether you're drying paint or ink or anything, it'll just make it dry quicker because the heat can pass through the paper. Okay, nice. Okay, paper has no memory, so if it curls up, just flatten it out. It doesn't remember it's supposed to stay curly or flat. So here we go. Let's just add a little bit of ink just so you can see what you can do with it. Okay. Not all colors available in paint. Correct. Incorrect. All colors available in paint, and actually more colors in paint than ink and oxide. So just know that there are all the colors in paint now. That, if you missed it at the very beginning, maybe that is the question. So yes, early on, there weren't all the colors, but now as of this live, the full palette of distress paint is back and here to stay. So there you go. That to me is very cool. Could you use a blower tool to move it around? Absolutely. Anything you want to move this around, a blower tool, a hair dryer. You can maybe you have a spinner, so you could do spin art. If you're going to store your paints, you can store your paints upright. This just happens to be the multi-storage tin that's used for paints and reinkers. You can also store them on their sides. It's really up to you how you want to store the paint. So let's add a little bit of ink to this just so you can see what I mean about things reacting and not. What do I want to add? I'll add some other, I won't make this too mucky because I'm going to get into some mucky stuff, but let's just add a little bit of fun. Those are some good colors. We'll add a little bit. I don't think I need any more purple on here. Okay. All right. Yes, stickers for the full palette. Mario, could you do me another favor, please?
Sure.
I'm so sorry. In the upper, there you go, over there, upper left door. Yep. You're going to see tiny blending tools in an acrylic tray. It says Distress Ink, please. So yes, all the labels, when you buy the label sheets, that's what I was saying before, that if you bought the large label sheets and you didn't have all the paint colors, you would have those leftover labels. So whenever you buy labels of any size, it has all of the colors on there. And yes, the metallics are in the large label because there are metallic paints. Same thing with metallic sprays. So that's why there's metallics on the rounds, but you don't have metallics on the rectangles because there are no metallic ink pads. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I love these questions. I do. That's the benefit of watching this. And that's okay if you come in a little later. Feel free to ask. Don't be shy. All right. I'm just going to take some tiny blending tools just to show you, just to add some color. I don't need to ink everything, but I just want to show you, if you're playing around with some color, like what you can do and what's not going to happen. Okay. You'll get it as this demo goes on. There's so many other things that you can do. Can you put glitter on paint? You probably could put glitter on anything. I would imagine yes, but does it have adhesive properties? No. So would it stick? Yes. Would it come off if you touch it? Yes. Because paint doesn't really have it. This paint doesn't have any adhesive properties. All right. So you're just throwing in some colors. You'll see in a second what I plan to do. Okay. So we've just added just some different colors of distress ink. This could be oxide. This could have been anything, but my point is I put this over a painted layer. So now I'm just going to go in and add water. And typically, if you add water to this, you would see that the color underneath would run everywhere. The color underneath is completely stable. The only thing moving is the ink you put on top of it. So this becomes really beneficial because in the instance of this background, it doesn't look like paint. The fluidness of the purple and yellow and all that looks like ink, but now you're able to put other colors over the top and move it, and it's not going to impact what's underneath, okay? That to me is a cool feature of paint, that we can combine our different mediums as long as you remember those properties. So doing backgrounds, yes, you can purchase paint as a single color. All of them are open stock. Are there labels for Spritz? Yes, because Spritz is the same color of distress. So you would use the small labels. You don't have all the colors of Spritz, but yes, the small rounds fit on Spritz. All right. So yeah, you could keep layering and layering. But now what you would need to remember is that our ink, of course, would react with the next layer of ink. So if I dry this and let's say I put red over the top of it, that blue ink isn't going to stay, but the paint will. So this one happens to be watercolor paper. This one happens to be a tag. I'll work on craft to show you that as well. But just playing around, just to remind you that if you just get out your things and take them for a test drive, very cool. Labels coming from Mica, the mica stains. There's no plans for that yet. I don't know. Maybe Ranger will surprise us over the season, but there are no plans for the mica stain because that really wasn't a permanent thing. But I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of you guys want them. I would like them, so I get it. All right, so just some backgrounds. Let's review. Let's look at these. This one is still drying, doing its thing. I'm happy. I'm going to leave it there. let's bring these in. These are pretty much done. I set these on a paper towel. Take a look at these. These are the first ones we did. So take a look at just how cool that background is, and knowing this is permanent, we could stamp. What's also great about this, because we saw, of course, watercoloring. So if you wanted to stamp and color with your watercolor pencils and then blend your watercolor pencils with water, they would sit on top of this brown without reacting, right? Because the pigment of the watercolor pencil would react, but this brown would not. So that's why you could use a white pencil, anything on there. That to me is really cool. So yes, you can use your pencils directly on top of these and blend those, because watercolor pencils are, well, they're for watercolor, they're not permanent, but the cool thing about this is that it would stay on the top. Okay, so I love how these three just look completely different. I'm still kind of manipulating, there we go, manipulating this, but going back to this first tag, because we're not going to do anything with it other than look at it right now, but just so you get the idea. So this is dry. If I went in and hose this with water now, what's going off on the sheet? Water, just clear. It does not react all of this. So that's really the factor you have to remember about paint. The water is clear, even though we soaked this tag, because once the paint is dry, it is permanent. So have all the playtime you want while it's wet. Swipe, hit it with water, flick, do all of those things. But remember that once it's dry, it gives you so much more flexibility, because you can do all these things on top of it. For those that, you know, you've tried to put it on a canvas before and like Distress ink just goes wild. Paints work on canvas, works on metal, works on wood. If you do plastic and glass, it's not really meant for those. It will dry on it, but it will scratch off of plastic and glass. It still needs something a little toothy. Could you put gesso down? Sure. You could put clear gesso over the paints, but you don't need to. You can just use the pencils directly on the paint, because the paint is not going to re-wet, because, well, as I just showed you, it's permanent after it's dry. So, but you could use clear gesso, absolutely. If you wanted to, sometimes it gets it a little bit more toothy as well. Okay, let's move this out, let's move this out. Let's talk, what do I want to talk about next? Because I've been answering your questions in real time, which is great. Okay, let's talk about texture. That might help you a little bit. What's up, Mario? Oh, okay, that's all right. So here, just going to go in and talk about textures. I'm just going to put these back real quick. Yes, I am that person that labeled all four sides of my ink pad, so I don't have to worry about what, you know, I used to be like, oh, this has to face the right way. Nope, now it's just so nice. Okay, let's talk a little bit about paint and textures and how that works with different texture mediums, because it's pretty cool. All right, any kind of texture paste we can do, but I'm going to talk about a couple of specific ones, just so maybe you can understand a little bit more of the benefit of opacity when it comes to paint versus ink. So, and I'll talk a little bit about some tools also. I'll get out some collage medium. It can really be anything. It could be crackle. Like, for example, if you have crackle paste opaque and you wanted it colored, you could put on the crackle paste, let it crackle, and then paint over the top of it, and it will look just like the old school colored crackle paint. Could you tint this paste? Well, that's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk about tinting opaque and translucent. So when I talk about this, like opaque and translucent, that's going to apply to regular texture paste. That's going to apply to crackle texture paste, opaque and translucent, grit paste, opaque and translucent. It's the same principles of that. We're just going to talk about the sludge of it, because I think when you have it, it's good. And this is just a distressed tin that I took the insert out of. This is the same tin as the ink pads. I don't typically store these. I store mine in like a spinner in my studio, but for demos, I love that I can fit 8 paste, some tools, and call it good. And then I can put the insert back in, but just so you know, not really a paste tin. Okay, so let's talk about colorant and what we can do, because understanding that is super important, because you have so many things. You can take your basic paste and create so many colors, all right? Distress paint, this is worn lipstick, and re-inker. Now, if you don't have a re-inker, you could squish your ink pad down to replicate ink. If you were tinting a small batch of something and you don't have re-inkers, you can squish your ink pad down and mix it up, okay? Oxide would give you a very similar effect to what I'm going to show you with the re-inker for the most part. Okay, so first we're going to talk about opaque paste. I'm just going to take off the rubber band. If you have rubber bands on your paste, hopefully they are lasting you longer. It's working for me, so hopefully it's working for you. Texture paste opaque is very much like buttercream frosting, very thick, okay? Very kind of whipped. This is opaque. Opaque meaning we can't see through it. All opaque pastes are slightly different. This one is just like a fluff. The opaque version of crackle paste has gesso in it. So that one you would need way more colorant to get it to shift, but it's still tintable, okay? What I wanted to show you here is the difference between these two mediums and coloring different paste. If you want to tint the paste, you could just take this. I'm just going to shake it up, shakety shake, whatever you want. A couple drips. You could start with one and keep mixing. Take a palette knife and you're just going to mix it. Like I said, it's like buttercream frosting. Imagine like putting this in a piping bag and that's it. You've mixed and now you have pink paste. So this could go through a stencil. It could be anything you want it to be. So let's say you were doing a Valentine something and you had a heart stencil and now you can just push that through and you can create a whole look of that. In fact, let's do that. Although I don't have a heart stencil out, I think I could find one in a pretty quick time. I don't know the number. Ooh, look, see? I knew it was early on. Let's take that. Just because it's there. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Take that and close this back up. Okay. It does look like frosting, I agree. Makes me want a cupcake. Okay. Take this, place this down, pick up the fluff. Now, with a palette knife, you have some options. You can move it around like this. I found these really inexpensive things on Amazon. They're squeegees that they use for tinting windows. And so it's plastic, but it's got like, this is rubber. And they sell them in all different sizes. I like this one. I just typed in like a mini 3-inch squeegee, but it's great because I think I got like 5 of them in there. They're easy to clean. But what I like is that it does allow me, if I just want to pull this down, I like the fact that this is kind of a rubber versus plastic. So it does allow me I can go different directions. I could still stand it up and easily clean off the paste. And then because it's rubber, it just comes off really easy. But I love the little flex there. So you can do that for many things. And I'm just going to lift this up. Look at that. Boom. Let that dry like conversation hearts, right? Easy. Okay. And you could go on and on. You get the idea. Perfect, perfect. I do love those I like these scrapers. Well, it's because it's really a squeegee. I mean, that to me is like, I'm just going to dip it in some water. See? Clean. I like stuff like that. So again, well, because tools make the job. I'm going to talk quite a bit about tools in here. And, you know, it's interesting. This is not throwing shade at anyone. Just going to throw this in water to clean it. So I've got a tray of water over here. But, you know, in our creative world, sometimes we do bring in tools from the outside world that are used in the creative world. And that's great when it has some type of cool modification or maybe, out of sight, out of mind. But I love to find the odd things where I'm like, wouldn't it be cool? And if it exists somewhere else, then I find it really, really hard morally to do it myself. So, because I'm going to talk about some other brushes. So yes, 3-inch mini squeegee, rubber squeegee. We don't post links on YouTube as far as on Amazon because we've tried that before for storage stuff, and then we post a link and then they sell out and then they replace it with something completely different on that same link, and that was no good for us. Yeah, so I'll just tell you, like, search that, find it. Maybe some stores might have it. Okay, so that was using paint. Now let's do the same paste and mix it with ink. Okay, so I'm just going to take just kind of a similar amount. And I'll take this and I'm just putting this back around and I'm just covering that seam. That's all I need to do on this. And then that keeps this jar more airtight. Okay, ink, proceed with caution. You need way less than what you imagine. So I'm going to do 1 drop from a dropper, and that is way too much for that much ink. So you could maybe drag the glass on a mat, and you can mix it directly on the glass as well. You don't need to use the craft sheet if you don't want to. This just helps with cleanup. And I'm just going to mix this up. So think of a reinker like food coloring, right? This is going to give you a completely different intensity of color. And I'll show you the dried samples because hopefully that will explain what this demo is all about when it comes to paint and ink. Because we do have so many different mediums in our creative space that could be customized with whatever color just using products you have. All right. So here, same thing. It could be through a stencil, but I'll just bring in that other one just to show you the color difference between worn lipstick, paint, and ink. Way more intense because it is a dye. Dye colorant, punchy, okay? So that to me is something to remember. And I have some dried samples, so I'm gonna show you what those look like and talk about translucent and opaque, so you can maybe jot down a note as far as colorants go. So just using a paper towel, clean this right off, just dry. If the medium is still wet and you use a dry cloth, it comes off like a dry erase board. All right, here are the samples. So again, we've got paint and re-inker of the same color. Thank goodness I put that lid on. I didn't realize until I laid this down that it's like, I hope you put that lid on, that re-inker. That would have been the telltale. So this is showing you opaque texture paste, paint, ink. This is just on watercolor paper. It doesn't really matter. I'm showing it just for the properties of colorants, okay? Texture paste is flexible. It's still pliable. You can use it on all sorts of things. If you put it on craft paper, it doesn't change at all. Why? Why doesn't this color change from brown to white? Does it have to do with these? Nope. It has to do with this. We're dealing with an opaque paste. So already it's opaque out of the gate. You cannot see through it. So it doesn't matter what color you put on it. You're never going to see through it. So you could put this on brown paper, black cardstock, wood, anything. It doesn't really matter because we're dealing with an opaque paste as our colorant. But when you get into a translucent medium, so a translucent texture paste, we can see through this. This is going to have a great glossy effect. And you mix it exactly the same way. The viscosity of translucent, very different. It's no longer buttercream. Now this is more, well, it's probably more like yogurt. Okay, has that really kind of yogurty vibe to it. But translucent is really interesting with different mediums. So let me put this back on because I don't need to mix it and use it and mix it and use it. So there you go. Okay. So now same paper, just white and brown. Now you can see translucent is very glossy compared to the opacity of opaque. So here's translucent. This one dries with a beautiful shine. Great. It still holds all its texture, even though it looks like yogurt. The texture of that is still completely visible. And I think that's very, very cool. But paint and ink now totally change. This, because it is translucent and the color builds up, it becomes very candy-like. Okay, so you see that when you're using it over the top of it, it just has a little bit of almost like candy. On craft, whoa, now we really see a difference. These are no longer the same. Okay, similar, but not the same because it is a translucent paste, meaning we can see through it. This will dry clear. So our paint is going to be better, truer color because pigment, the paint, opaque. But even though we thin it out, we're still going to get that nice pink hue because we mix this with paint. Ink, on the other hand, it is translucent. So we really lose that pretty color when we work on darker surfaces. So keep that in mind. If you're looking to color something, ask yourself, do I want to see through that color? If it doesn't matter, well, then it doesn't matter. But if you want to see through that color, the choices of colorants, that matters. Because you may want to say, you know what? I want to put paste, I want to do a leaf or a flourish on craft, but I still want to see the color and I want it shiny. I want to use a translucent paste, but I don't want to see my paper. Well, then your colorant should be paint. Okay? So there you go. That was just a quick little, here's what you need to know about paste and dealing with that. But let's play with some other things on paste and paint. Yes, I believe rubber bands do work better than press and seal. Press and seal for me, it was just so messy every time. I mean, it works, I guess, if you're gonna stick with it, but I found that pressing it down in the jar and taking it off, I just couldn't be bothered, so I just stopped. So rubber bands to me was a great alternative. Okay, let's bring in some stuff that was this has already been pasted. Mario and I, we did some little pasting last night, so it's already dry. We've got opaque texture paste. We even have black, so that could be fun. Maybe we'll do something Maybe we'll do something with that. We even have some translucent. So see, same design. This one is going to be shiny and glossy, but I love the texture marks. So this one I didn't, as you can tell, I didn't really use that to smooth it out. I just went all crazy with the palette knife because I love those textures. Okay, let's create a little background for this. I did this one years ago. Don't even know where, but I'm going to do it again. Okay, let's take a stencil. We're going to take a matching stencil. So this is the stencil that I used on this tag. Then I'm going to take a grip mat. You can do anything, any kind of grippy. What do I want? I'll do this piece. This will be big enough. Just going to use, grip mat is just a really thin silicone mat. It's not sticky like a sticky mat, but it's going to do the grip. Okay, so I'll place it down. I don't really need this. I'm going to work directly from the glass. So this, when I roll this up, I roll it into the silicone. Like I keep the silicone inside just because if you store it on a shelf or something, you don't want all those little dust bunnies just to stick to that. So if it's on the inside, it doesn't get sticky. And we don't really like to dust around here. So,
We don't?
of course we do. All right. So I'll place this down. I'm going to place this. I'm just going to kind of line it up. I think this is pretty good. But I actually want to still tape this. So I'm going to do this. So I move my grip mat down so I can grip the tag, grip part of the stencil, but I still want to tape the stencil just because that's how I like to work. But again, you do what works. I'm going to take a little bit of masking tape. I'm going to tape this down just because I might want to kind of work as a hinge. You guys can see that. Oh yeah, I'm still in frame. Okay. So let's go in and just do some colors. So we're just going to create a quick palette. And again, if you were on your glass media mat, you could go ahead and use that white palette area. Okay. So this, I'm just doing a drop of different colors. Spice marmalade, that'll be nice. And this might be a little boring when I build a palette, but it is what it is. You could do a lot of these. You absolutely could. This is just, it's a fun one. And like I said, I did it years ago. And I even think I remember I did it and I didn't finish it. And people were like freaking out a little bit. All right, let's do some fossil. I want a brighter yellow than scattered straw. So I'm gonna use a little fossilized amber, but it could be anything. Maybe it's mustard seed. Maybe it's whatever. Oh, I'm still in frame. That's good. Green, do a little crushed olive. There we go. Maybe a little lucky clover. And you can see it's just a quick shake. So it's not a lot. And this is more paint, honestly, than I will need for this project, but it doesn't matter. It's still gonna be worth it. Little stormy sky. Let's throw in something a little bright over here. Little peacock feathers. So paint is one of those things, and that's where I think the Asked and Answered series, for me, continues to kind of bring things to the forefront because, you know, as makers, there's so many products that have developed in, you know, whether you're a new maker or whether you're a seasoned maker and you've been making for a long time, like products come and go, and sometimes it's just out of sight, out of mind. And I hope that this series, whether you're creating live or whether you're coming back and watching it again, ooh, got a little drip on there. That it encourages you to say, you know what, I'm going to just throw that on, just going to watch it, and then, you know, play along, just so you can get out a medium that maybe you haven't used. So maybe it's texture paste, you watch that video, because it is just technique based like this. It's just conversational. It's not, we're going to make a card and all that. You could do whatever you want with what you're creating, and you could make cards with it. So that's the cool thing. You could have all these backgrounds and then check out some card making videos and go, oh, I'll use that background for that card idea or that die cutting or whatever. So
All your little color dots remind me of like candy on paper.
totally.
It looks just like
I know. I love that. I love those. Except for me, I was never so patient that I would just go ahead and I would actually eat it. Will paste stick to glass? Yes, it will. Not permanent, meaning not washable, not something you would do on dishware. But yes, if you were doing a bottle or a jar and you wanted to put it on, yes, it would. My advice though, if you're going to use any of the pastes or mediums on glass, put down a layer of collage medium first and let it dry. So paint a very thin layer, let it dry. It'll look a little frosty to give it tooth, but once you put the translucent medium over it, because it works, there's a great technique that many of the makers have done with the translucent crackle on bottles. I think there's many makers that have done this. I think Stacy, Zoe Hillman, like a lot of people have done that technique, but you put this on glass, let it dry. It's going to get a little tooth. Then when you apply your translucent paste, be it texture paste or crackle paste, when it dries, that barrier between the glass and the medium has a little tooth and it will grip way better. It'll crack, it won't flake off. So that would be my suggestion to you on that, is just put a little bit on there. It's good. Okay, so let's do some brushes. I'm gonna just do use a little brush here. You can use whatever kind of paintbrush. I have a lot of different brushes. I love Dina Wakley brushes, just because I like the handles and I like just those different kind of, I'm a flat brush guy. Round ones, like I can't control them. Round ones just go all flippity-do on me, but I still have them as any maker should. But I'll just use this little one. You could tell it's very well loved. Just a Ranger brush. It's from the alcohol ink set. But I'll talk about some other ones, because if you wanted to go through a stencil, you could just take a blending tool with foam, and that's a great way to do paint through a stencil very quickly, because sometimes a brush will push it underneath. So this makes it really, really simple. But I'm going to paint colors. So what I'm doing, just so you guys get what I did, this is the one that I put the paste through. It is dry. This was texture paste, opaque. Okay. Then what I want to do is I want to add some color back to where that texture paste is. And I'm just going to kind of go through in a little bit of a rainbowy order. So by using that, I'll try to stick to the texture. I may fall off of that texture a little bit. And as I go, I'm just going to dip into like the next color just to change it. If I want to clean it, I've got a towel just hanging off my pants so I can just wipe that brush. I'm not dipping the brush in water because I really don't want to have the paint be wet. And so if there's texture paste that's filling the whole circle, I'm doing the whole circle. So if you're like, why did you only do half? Because maybe you can't see from there, but there's only paste on part of it. Okay, I did miss a little spot up there though, so I'll just hit that. It's not going to matter. Ooh, I like that color. Okay, real fun. Cleaning it off, and then I'm just gonna kind of transition. I'm not gonna overthink. Thinking is overrated. So just go for the color. All right. A little bit more. And each time I'll clean even in between. You know, if you want just some of that color to really come clean, just like drag it down the towel and get some of that spice marmalade. We'll go into ripe persimmon as well. So see, a flat brush just allows me to kind of smash it around in there. It's going to be fine. Little ripe persimmon. That's nice. And maybe I'll even throw some of that in there. Bring some of that to the next one. I'll go into fossilized amber. That kind of has a little bit of a wild honey vibe. Pick up some of that. Go into a little bit of yellow. And, you know, you could add whatever colors. You could add white to this. And, I mean, you could really overthink this, but that's just not where my brain goes. I just like to play. I think if you allow yourself more of that freedom and get over yourself and get out of that perfectionist mindset, I think you really will enjoy whatever time you spend creating. We need more of that. More play. All right, moving on. How are we doing, Mario? Because I'm looking at dots and I'm not following the chat right now, so I'm kind of freaking out. What do we got? With metal stars and frames on Ideology, can you paint them or will it come off? Yes, you can paint them. And I'll do a demo. Well done. I will do a demo on that today as well, showing paint. And I actually have a make that Paula gifted me many years ago because she did these painting things on Ideology and I loved it. And I was like, can I have that? So I'll show you that. It's very cool. All right, so I think I want a little truer blue or a little brighter blue or a little deeper blue. So I'm going to throw in some chipped sapphire here. And with metal, you'll see you can literally just paint it on. You don't need to prime it. Chipped, so see how, okay. Let's see, I'm going to hold this up. My chipped is a little thick. I see it coming out. So see how like that's a little, I'll say that's thick, like that's sludgy. So when I see that my paint is like that, I'm going to add a little water and shake it up and mix it back and it will bring it back to life. I'm not going to do that for this, but just so you know, if you ever notice a paint that still comes out, so see, it's still workable, but it's starting to get a little sludgy. Water will totally thicken that up or thin it out, and you'll be ready to go. Sweet mother of glory. My brain and this mouth, sometimes they just don't align. I'm sure many other people can relate to that. Okay. Almost. Oh, I like that color too. Oh, that's really pretty. That's a little shaded lilac. I'll go back into wilted violet, back over here. I don't mind that. So let's say you're like, ooh, that should be a little bit lighter. You could just jump right on. Remember, paint is opaque, so have fun with it. Jump around in that. Okay. Then I'll just get into a little bit of the grunge, a little bit of the sludge. I don't have a lot, but I do have pumice stone, so that means all is good in the world. We'll throw in some browns. I think I got to go a little darker brown as well. Okay. Put a little bit of that. So you can see already like how much paint is left. So this is where playtime as a maker, you'll actually get more mileage out of your stuff because, you know, you're not doing like one thing and cleaning it all up. Okay, I'm good with that. So I'm just going to clean the brush in water. Done. Set that aside. Clean this up, and I know this is gonna freak people's freak, but yes, you could drag something through it. You could do a million things. I'm just not. I'm gonna take this, lift it off. It's great. So I really didn't need the hinge after all. Throw that in water, or you could just spray it with water. But if you kind of get in the habit with stencils of just having a tray of water, it keeps you from having to scrub any of that. Okay, let's clean this up. Bye-bye paint. But it would swipe a rainbow. It would. It's just something that sometimes I'll get, if I did that, then I would get totally carried away with that background. Okay. Clean that up, clean that up. A little bit of water on my hands. See that little bit of paint? I'm cleaning that up. Okay. So that's what we have right now. So we have a textured, painted something. Let's dry it. So again, we started with opaque texture paste. It dried. We took the same stencil. We put it over the top of this. We let that dry. And now we're drying the paint. Could this dry on its own? Yes. How do you know if it's dry? If you touch it and it's not wet, it's dry. You're welcome. What? It's obvious. That's like old school Tim Holtz class 20 years ago. It was the most asked question I had in every single class, whatever we would do. It could be ink, it could be stamping, and they're like, how do we know if it's dry? I'm like, touch it. Is it wet? And they're like, no. I'm like, then it's dry. That happens to be a dirty thumb. That wasn't a good example.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and then I'm like, you're welcome. Because then it like, I think when you say you're welcome, something triggers in your mind of like, why did I even ask that? Yeah, it's like, why did I even ask that? Because it is. Yeah, it's like, thanks, Captain Obvious. But sometimes as makers, that's what I'm saying. You get in your head. Like, you ask yourself the most ridiculous questions to hold yourself back. Like, I don't want to screw it up. What if it's not dry? Well, it's dry. So we're ready to go. All right. Next, we're going to do collage medium. This is just a fun technique, like just to show you how you can completely transform backgrounds because our colorant is permanent. That's why I'm showing you this. I think that it's really fun. We're going to use some collage medium. So this is a cool thing that I found. So, and again, I don't throw shade. I even talk about it, and I have products for it. So huge fan of collage medium. I did collage medium brushes with Ranger years ago. I still like them. I still use them for certain things. But what I hate about them is cleaning them, because it is a fabulous brush for glue because it is so dense and so thick, and you can see demos on it, different sizes. I love them. But I'm going to be honest. I don't use them much because I hated cleaning it. It was like, I would actually give it to Mario. I'm like, would you mind cleaning these? Because he would go outside with a hose because it just keeps, it holds so much medium. So here's what I found. I found these brushes, and it may not be new to many of you, but it was new to me. I love to just walk around the craft store, and I was in the resin department, and I found this brush, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary. It's a silicone brush. And I'm like, oh, so cool. But it was only 99 cents. So I was like, oh, cool, I'll pick that up. It's a little flappy. This is my favorite thing for collage medium, because you can just paint it on, you just rinse it off. Or even if it dries, you peel off the medium. So I use it for paste, I'll use it for paint. I'll use it for collage medium, anything. Then I was like, well, this is wild. So thanks Google Images, I put this in, and yes, I just saw in the chat, it's a skincare mask brush. This freaking thing is in the cosmetic world and has been forever. Because honestly, I was going to do this with Ranger. I'm like, I've never seen this brush. It's so cool. It's got a little dip in there. And then Google, I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing a product that you can go buy. I went on Amazon. You can buy 20 of these brushes for $7.99. What? And if you don't need 20, you can get like 4 of them for $5. And they come round, obviously, because it's for your face, where it goes like over your cheekbone, or I don't know what parts of the face these go to, but they're all different ones. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And they're all silicone, yum. And then I found these. These are like little sampler ones. See, there's like a little thumb notch. It's the same brush. This is so good if you're collaging, like if you're doing ephemera, because you know with ephemera, it's like stick, dip, you're going really fast. I just love this because you could just like put some down, ephemera, put some down, fab. So I've done. And these, I think the first ones I bought, you know, because I clicked on the first thing I saw on Amazon. You just look up silicone face brush. Hello, you'll see a million. And then I looked at this and I was like, oh, okay, that's like, they were 3 for $3. I'm like, oh, that's a good deal. And then just yesterday, I found 30 for $8. So did I buy them? Yes. Do I need 30 of them? I do not. But do I need to buy them again? I will not. So there you have it. So they were so incredibly cheap on Amazon or in the resin department, or from many of you said like Sephora or anything else. It's the same silicone. The difference was whether you had a flashy handle or not. So if you're looking for cool things for paste, for collage medium or paint, these brushes, they rock my world. They're very good. So that's what we're going to use. So just so you know. And yes, that was the true Ranger story. I had samples and everything. I thought like I had just discovered plutonium, and then nope. I was like, well, that didn't work out. That wasn't how it was. Okay. I'm just going to paint it on. See, look at this. Freaking awesome. And it gets into all those areas. So I'm just painting it. Again, collage medium. I kind of prefer the little dippy one myself. I don't know why. Maybe because it like, maybe you can't see from there, but it seems to go, it goes into the little areas better. So that's kind of my favorite, but changed my life, these brushes.
Mine too.
And when mine doesn't have to clean them anymore. And when I told Paula, because Paula and I, you know, whenever we're Zooming or something, she's like, I gotta wrap my brush, you know, because we all know like the curse of a dried collage medium brush is like, forget it. And if you don't want to peel it off, if you put it in water, I just dipped it in water and just swiped it. It is 100% clean. Seriously, ridiculous. But anyway, I told her, I'm like, this is going to change the way you craft. And she's like, it's the best thing ever. And yes, in the craft world, it probably would have sold for $6 or $7, but 99 cents or 20 of them for $8, whatever. Okay, so after this is painted on, we can leave it like that. If I see any little areas, I might go with my finger just because I like extra brush strokes. So just where I see some of it, kind of how my brush hit. If I would have done it with a brush, I could have, but I didn't. So I'm just going to put that collage medium on and let that dry for a second, clean up my glass, and then we'll dry it. So yeah, you could tell, happy guy. I can't wait for the 30 to arrive. I think they're coming today.
A lot of people said they'd find it Dollar Tree.
See, it's there. Isn't that wild? It's like, it's right in, and how many of you have used it for mixed media? That would be my question, because I've never seen it. And it's like, why not? Maybe just because, you know, we don't think to use it in mixed media. Look at the blending brushes, you know, those handled fluffy ones. Those came from the cosmetic world. So many crazy, the crossover of stuff. But I never knew they existed either, Lloyd. I never did. But then again, you know, I'm not applying face masks, so that's why I wouldn't. But it's wild. You still would have bought a Tim Holtz brush. I know, but honestly, I couldn't do it. And it was so kind of Ranger, because really we had it sourced, we had sample sent. I mean, all that stuff takes time and money, and we were just ready. And then I stumbled across it. I'm like, I can't. There's no way. And they were like, we understand, we get it. And that's really what I appreciate about brand partners that are, you know, they get it. There's no way that I could have said, oh yeah, look at this brush, you need it. You do, but you need it for $1. You need it, you know, not for 10, but that's just how it is. Everybody's got to cover costs. So that's really where, you have a reputable brand that's just like, we get it. It's not always about the buck. It's about integrity matters, But sometimes there is a tool, so that's why I'm saying I'm not throwing shade, that is in another industry that you modify to a look and you bring it out your way. There's nothing wrong with that, because there are sometimes ways that you fine tune or tweak something where you like it. So have I used it to move alcohol ink? No. I bet it would. I bet it would stain, but I bet it would move. Cool. All right, so here's our background. So it is dry. We have our collage medium on it. And why did I do that? I did it because we're going to grunge it up next. And this paste, this opaque paste, even though we could paint it, you saw that it dries in that, that dry kind of chalky finish. So if I were to put another colorant over this, like let's say distress ink or pencils or crayon, even though there's paint here, it would absorb into this because this medium, this paste, is designed to pull color in. So what I wanted to do on this was put my color down, but now seal my color so no other color could go into that paste. If it was just paint, we already covered that early on. The paint resisted. So I don't want to confuse the issue of like, well, why did you seal it? Because you said the paint would resist the ink. It's because the paste underneath it would still pull anything you put over the top of it. It didn't matter if it was ink or paint or whatever it was. Okay. So next we're going to just take a favorite, going to take Distress Crayon, and we're just going to carefully apply the crayon to the tag. All right?
Carefully.
Take whatever kind of tool. Like this. This is a brush. I'm sure this existed in the makeup world because I think I saw it for like a cosmetic brush, but the brushes were not natural bristles like these are. These are boar's hair. They were synthetic. And I'm like, I want something that's much more rigid and stiff. So we took the concept of this and applied a different type of material that I didn't find out in the space. But that's what I was saying. Inspiration everywhere. Okay, take a little water. I'm going to spray it on the glass. Dip my brush in that water just to get a little wet. We're just going to start moving this stuff around. Just to get it going. We're going to use our hands as well, just kind of push it around with our fingers, but I just want to get this started. So we're grunging this up, and you can see already everything is transformed significantly. You can add more wherever you want. You can have some buildup of color around that texture because that's always fun. And you could use any kind of Distress Crayon color. Now I'm using my fingers and I'm smudging this color around. So see how this is going on like much more intense? Just because I want to build up chunkier color. You do what you like. You may not like that. You may like it soft. You may not even like the grunge. You may have said, well, you ruined this. Maybe. Maybe not. Okay. So now I've got some grunged stuff in there. Okay. Magic of crayon. This also is water reactive. These are never permanent crayons. Like any kind of water is just going to make those go crazy. Even after a year, they're still going to be water reactive. But the paint is going to be such a strong colorant that now if I'm just going to take a paper towel. You could use a baby wipe for this, but you don't want it super wet. And then we're just going to go over and just start lifting some of this color off. Now, if you didn't want this, like if you didn't want any of that background removed, what could we do? We could put the stencil back and we could just cover the circles. Or if I want that filled in, I could just go back in with my finger and fill in the blanks. And now I can take a paper towel and just wrap it around my finger. And then just go in and touch the dots. This is just about kind of creating these grungy, colorful dots because see how I'm removing the crayon? As you do this, you're going to need to switch to different parts of the paper towel because once the color of the crayon builds up on it, essentially you'd just be reapplying the color. Pretty cool technique. I love this for a card background. I think it just adds some interest because you have texture, you have really, really vivid color. I think the paint made it very easy to make the dots different colors because you might be saying, well, why did you use paint to do the dots? You could have added whatever color, but I'm not sure what colorant would have gone on that paste through a stencil as easy as paint. Could you have like used an ink, a dabber, a blending tool, anything to try to ink any circle? You could have, but I did paint because I wanted the color and I wanted the ease of application. But yeah, cool background. So it's a tag right now, but I'd probably chop it here, and then it becomes a background to something. but I love the finish. I love the look of it. I love the texture. I love the intensity of the color. So there you go. There's another one that we can do. Been doing that a long time. I absolutely love it. I'll set that aside. Let's real quick do a couple more let's do this one. Let's see what we're going to get on this one. Okay, for this, what do I want to do? Let's do some paint colors and some ink colors. I think I'm going to do this first and then I'll add some ink. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. Don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm going to take some salvage patina. Let's do a couple of drips of that. We'll do some cracked pistachio. There you go. Perfect. And let's just take this and where's that little boogie? Yeah, that doesn't work. I don't think that works for that. I mean, if I'm going over the thing, that's fine, but I don't think that little silicone thing. This is what I want to do. I just want to take some paint with my fingers. You'll see why in a bit. Because I really want to get some of that paint around the edge, and that silicone brush just didn't reach into, see, I want to push it into the edge of that design, and the silicone brush was just a little too thick. Then I'm just going to dab it. Let's just kind of smear it around. You know, maybe we'll have some paint here, have some here, maybe we'll have some going this way. Don't overthink it. This is just a hot mess. This is just going to show you a little bit of a resist factor. So now on this black paste, I'm just going in with my paint and I'm just dabbing some of that color directly on top. Let me find a clean applicator just so I can get a little of that cracked pistachio. So that's what I've done. So I painted a little bit over that black texture paste. I've added a little bit of paint here. You can move it around. I'm not going to. I just want to show you a really simple way that we can work with paint as a resist, because we can even stamp with it. We'll do some stamping with paint too. Must be entertaining. I don't see a lot of questions, and that's okay. I don't want you to feel like you need to ask questions during this. I just want you to know that when you see an Asked and Answered live, that's when you show up. Because if you ask the question after the live, there's no one there to answer it. Okay, we're going to dry this. Okay. So drying this is just going to make sure that when I add my next medium, because we're going to use ink spray, it's really important that the paint is dry, because we know that the paint is water reactive. That would be the same as an ink spray. Okay, so if you ever put paint down and then you start throwing ink and you're like, oh, why is my paint becoming muddy? It's just because the paint didn't dry, and it's not permanent until it dries. So just want to make sure. So I'm drying it. See where I put it really thick on that black? I just want it to dry it. Okay, so this could be done with ink pads. This could be anything. I'm just going to use some sprays because I find that to be a little quicker. So we'll use some rusty hinge. We'll use a little fossilized amber. Both of those I think will be great. What is the main difference between paint and regular acrylic paint? So we covered that at the beginning, but the main difference is the fact that these are water reactive, so they wick, and I did a cool demo at the beginning of how they wick and work with water. And then they are permanent when dry. So acrylic paint, if you were just painting with it and that's all you did with paint, they would be very similar in that regard. But if you're doing technique, regular acrylic paint doesn't do all of these techniques that these do. So this is really more of a technique-based paint. All right, so we're going to add some spray stain. Like I said, we could have done this with ink pads. But yeah, if you check out that beginning of those tags, it's really cool just to see those 3 brown tags and like kind of how different that is. Okay, so I added some rusty hinge and some fossilized amber spray stain. I'm adding water, and now I'm going to do some drying. And don't freak out whenever you see stuff. Don't freak your freak. The paint will work as a resist. And what's really interesting is even when you put something really intense over it, see how when it's wet, you're going to think, no chance, buddy, you messed that up. But when it dries, that's where the paint comes to the surface. And as you know from the last one, we can always reveal more of that. So again, I'm just drying this. My ink, however, will always react. Even though I dried it, it's going to react. So let me just set that aside real quick. I'm going to clean up some of this stuff. Because I just don't want to work in all that orange and yellow if I don't have to. A little bit of water. This is where that That's where that cotton towel really comes into play. You know, because if you're working your own sludge, everything's just kind of messy. Okay. Now let's add some more water to it, because I do want to just get just a little bit more visibility on that teal color. So I can just take my water and see how it'll just push that color right off, because my ink is not permanent, but my paint is. So even though that color's moving, that blue under there, that the teal, the colors that I did for kind of a patina are completely permanent under there. So I love how we can manipulate that whole look. I'm just going to dry this. Question, if you only had an hour and all products, what paint technique would you choose? The one that interested me the most in that moment. Because for me, I think like most creatives, it's like shiny object. You know, what are you interested in that moment? Are you interested in stamping, blending, stenciling, patina? So I think it's always important that, especially as makers, you know, there's a lot of content out there, including stuff like this. Don't do what we do. Just do what inspires you. Take what you see here and then go, I like that. The rest of it, not so much. But I like that, and that's what you should do. Because then you'll enjoy it better. Because if you do a technique just because I shared it, but it's really not your jam, you'd be like, well, that was pointless. Look at that.
That came out really cool.
That's a quick, cool patina. I like the black paste because the black is very intense. I love how the paint, that's still a little wet right there. Let's take that off. I love how the paint, see how vibrant it is when you pick it up? It will always stay chalky. So if I wanted that paint to be visible right there, I could just add a couple of drips of water. See? Because it's already going to react that ink. But now take something perfectly porous, like a paper towel, and then we really popped that color. So see how much brighter that is than that? So you have the ability. This isn't going to come off from the touch. This is only going to be water reactive. And so that's what's unique about, you know, black paste isn't something that I use a ton. I'll show it to you. Black opaque. But I do love to use it for grungy stuff because it really stands out and it allows you to add your color. And even though you add orange, and the orange did soak into the black is always going to dominate any additional color. Remember? So that's a cool tag. All right. So that kind of brings me to, geez, let's see. Let's do Eroded metallic, just because that made me think of that. I wasn't going to, but I'm doing it now. And then we'll do some stamping, and then we'll do some metal and resin and embossing folders. How are we doing on time? Not bad. All right, you guys okay with that? I hope so. Okay, Eroded metallic. Eroded metallic is a technique that really, I think, showcases the properties of distress paint the best, in my opinion. It is also the most challenging technique to master, in my opinion. But once you do, it's so much fun. It's so cool, so easy to do. So I'll take a paintbrush for this, because I'm going to want something that's going to go over the top of it very quick. So I'll use this, but you could also, you know, you could use a collage brush or whatever. And then we're going to do stuff for the background. I want my background kind of blendy. So I think I'll use a blending tool just to show you like different tools can still work. If you're like, well, I don't have that and I don't have that. You should have something. And if you don't have that, just use these. Okay. So what we're going to do on this, it could be any surface. So the technique I'm going to share with you will work on a tag, watercolor paper, wood, anything you want. I see a question, how do you make this water resistant? Distress paints are permanent when dry. So that is water resistant. If you're talking about the ink, you would use microglaze over it. So back to that microglaze question, you could add microglaze to this tag then, and it would seal all of those inks. You would just rub that on, rub it in, distress microglaze. It's over in that bottom drawer on the far left, Mario, and I'll show that. That's how you can make the inks permanent as well. Yeah, bottom wood drawer. No, right here. The wood drawer. Yep, on the left. You'll see a little jar on the top. Cool, you see it? Great, thanks. So that's how you, but if it was just paint, you do not need to seal paint. Remember, that's really important. There you go. Distress microglaze. See, water resistant sealer. Just kind of looks like, I don't know, like kind of Carmex, but it evaporates. So this, you would just rub this over the tag wherever you wanted. And this is going to then seal. And when we say seal, I don't mean like seal, put it outside for the season. I mean seal where it's not as water reactive as it was. Sometimes when, we're dealing with paper and you hear a sealant, it's like, oh, that means, I can take this piece of paper and, hang it on my front door. No, you can't do that. But it's going to be very resilient to water. So I'm just going to take a dry paper towel now and just kind of work that microglaze in, because you want it to set into the paper. It leaves a light sheen as it's drying, but then it will evaporate completely. And what that does is that when water hits this, it just beads up on the top. So see how the water just sits now on the ink instead of the ink running everywhere? That's what microglaze does. So do I microglaze everything I do? No, I don't plan on anything I make going out and playing in the rain, nor do I envision anyone licking the art that I give them. But if you wanted it sealed, even a watercolor, the only thing this does not work on from a distress perspective are crayons. If your crayons are on there and you put microglaze, whatever is in here eats this. But microglaze will seal watercolor pencils, oxide, ink, any of that, okay? But I don't want you to always get caught up in sealing your work, unless, it's gonna go in the Smithsonian or something. Maybe that's the plan. Okay, so back to this. We start with a surface. Doesn't matter if it's wood, canvas, tag paper, you name it. And we're going to start with our base patina colors of paint. So for this one, let's take some salvage patina, cracked pistachio. Let's do a little peacock feathers. And for fun, we'll play with a little uncharted mariner and twisted citron. Do we need all these colors? Heck no. That is crazy, but we're going to because it's fun. Then you're going to choose one of the metallics. Does it need to be a metallic? Yes, it does. Which color? Whatever you want. I'm going to always go with bronze because I love that patina coppery look. But could you do it with tarnished brass or brush pewter? Yes. So like, could your undertones be red and you put pewter on it and you're going to see red? Yes. Could it be brown or gold and you put, yes. So you'll see in a minute, it will work with any color, but my color choices are going to be more patina and bronze for a coppery finish. Okay. So we're going to start by just doing a background of patina-y colors. So I'll just take, again, we're going to make a little palette. So you can imagine if you were in your creative space, you would have kept that palette that you made in the very first project. Anything that you had on the side, you would have just left it there and you could have just dipped right into it. So you don't always have to create all of these things. But from a technique perspective, I like to just, kind of identify what we're using so you get it. Yes, microglaze will seal watercolor. It will seal any type of a water-based. It'll even, because like an oil-based ink, you don't have to seal, but yes, it will seal watercolor pencils, distress. If you put it over oxide, it does change the finish of oxide, especially if it's oxidized. But, that's a trade-off. Maybe you like that. So for this, I almost picked up the brush because I was too busy talking. That's for this. I'm going to go in with a blending tool for this just because I want to create something patina-y, meaning I'm not going for something that's going to be perfect. I want different colors to show through different areas at different times. You'll see in the finished result, but this first thing, like this goes through a lot of ugly. I'm not going to lie there. You're like, that? I could have done that with my eyes closed, and maybe you could. Oh, hey. Let's do a little bit of that. That's going to be good. That's salvage patina. So you know that because I want really patina heavy. And so this is where I'm using like the foam because I can pounce a color right over the top. You'll see as this patina layer builds. Okay. There you go. A couple of drips. A couple of drips. Let's do some more peacock feathers. I do like that. Okay. So far, so good. So all I'm doing is just building up layers, but I don't want it to be one color. At least not to me. But I want to build up some paint. So that's why I thought. And this is still washable. So remember, if you're using blending foam for paint, as long as you wash it while the paint is wet, the paint will come out of this foam. If you let it dry, you can still use the foam. The foam will actually remain soft, but the paint will be on there. So, ooh, that's nice. I do like that. It's really nice. I was surprised. That was a little Twisted Citron. This is the other cool thing about like paint, you know, because it's all pigment, it just covers up what you did, you know? So if you're like, oh, I wanted some green there, I can just put that on there. And I like the foam because see, I still have all those colors kind of working together. So even though I've got some Uncharted Mariner, it had all those other colors. So it just kind of softens wherever I put this. So, and you can give it like a little twist, a little shimmy shimmy when you're doing it, whatever. Do what works, you know, like just like, cause as I'm dabbing, I'm actually like doing this when I'm dabbing, just so I'm getting different parts. Cause if you just use it as a stamp, it would stamp that little blue dot, like little tracks. Okay, there we go. That's a good color base for me. I'm happy with those colors. Maybe you envision patina to be greener, bluer, whatever it is, that's totally fine. You just need to have fun with it. And you could do all of this stuff ahead of time. So this is a great way, as I mentioned, to alter like even a book cover, a piece of chipboard, an etc. tag, anything like that. Okay. Gonna add water to this. Yes. Should we swipe something through this? Why not? It probably could still be, oh my gosh, by the time I get this piece of paper out with my pork chop fingers, like that paint will be dry. Let's see. It may not be. I don't know. It took me forever to get that piece of paper out. Oh no, that's cool. Yeah, I'll be good with that. Cool background. Delightful. Set it off to the side. I couldn't let that palette go to waste. Okay. Clean up. Okay, here we go. So this is the part of the show that you really need to pay attention because there's no rewinds, no do-overs. And this is where if you're going to attempt this technique, let yourself fail. Be okay with failing. And if you succeed on the first time, like high five yourself, because even after all the years that I've done this, it can still not work, you know, because everything has to be perfect conditions for this technique to work. And there's not many techniques that I do that require that. Okay, before I go, I just need to add a little bit of light. I'm sorry. As much as I want to just stick with this, to me right now, this is looking like a Jungle Cruise, and I'm not for that. I want a little bit more patina. So I'm doing some Stormy Sky and Tumble Glass, and I'll be okay. I just, see, it was just a little too nuts. There we go. I just felt that I wouldn't have any light area. You're not going to see any of this. So if you're like, now you just finger paint it, you're not going to see it. Okay. So the thing about this technique is we are solely relying on the properties of this paint that we covered at the very beginning of this demo, which is what makes distress paint cool. It is water reactive while it's wet, but permanent when it's dry. So this background I wanted dry. And do we have to use a heat tool? No. If you were doing a picture frame or a bunch of these, you could paint them all, set them aside, and you can come back and do this next part tomorrow or the next day or next week. It doesn't really matter. But it is important that you understand what you're going for before you start, because there are times where you think you followed everything to a T, but you didn't. You missed the most important thing. Okay, so we have a dry background, and we're going to take a metallic paint. And what we want to do is we want to cover this whole entire surface with a layer of metallic paint as quickly as possible. So that's why I'm going to use a brush. If you had another device that got paint down quick, excellent. While the paint is wet on there, we are going to quickly apply water to it. And we're not misting it. We're just going to start dripping and dropping puddles of water onto the wet paint. What people technically do wrong with this is, one, they don't wait for this to dry. You know, it's still kind of tacky. That's not going to work. Or two, they just finished drying it and the tag is still hot and they go to the paint. That's not it. Or they're so busy painting this metallic, 5 or 6 beautiful, even parallel strokes, that first brush stroke of paint has already dried. We can't use any of that. Could use a brayer. As I mentioned, use whatever tool you feel is good for you. I think a brayer doesn't get enough paint down. But if you have a brayer that you can just like get paint down in one swoop, go for it. I just find like brushing is the best. And I love this technique because it could be small. You can do this on chipboard. You can do this on a cardboard box. You could do this on anything you want. Okay, we're going to go in with paint. Now you may think like, Well, that's crazy. That looks like a lot of waste. It might be, it might not be. And I leave the bottle open because I don't even have time to open the bottle again. That's how dramatic this is going to be, okay? I'm gonna load up my brush. I love how fluid this metallic paint is. And I'm just going to start painting over this tag. And once I get paint on it, if I need to move it, I'll paint. I'm done. I'm not worrying about anything else. Picking up the water, and I'm just gonna start spraying it. Maybe I've got little drips. Maybe I'm gonna go for big puddles here. I'm gonna go in different areas. Let's go with a big drip there. Okay, maybe a little bit there. All right, so here's what I have. Can you see the amount of water on there? Excellent. Next, you can close this, you're done. This, you can put in water, you're done. We're gonna dry this. We need to dry it with a heat tool. Why? Because we don't want this water to dry. We want the paint that is not covered in water to dry. So using a heat tool, when I start seeing that, see how it's starting to move? I know that the other stuff is dry because the water is starting to glide over it, okay? So you're gonna take something porous, a paper towel. I wouldn't recommend a cotton towel for this. You're gonna lay it on the top. You're gonna tap it down with your hands, and you're not gonna put a book on it. You're not gonna let it dry overnight. You're just going to immediately lift off and reveal your eroded metallic. So what happens is, isn't that cool? So I still have some water. So could I go again? Yes, but now with the same paper towel. And it doesn't really matter what paper towel you use. I'm gonna go with a clean one because, like, see the little drips? I don't wanna use a ton of pressure. I don't wanna brayer this because these drips would like spread out, and that's not what we want. But see, I had some little ones that were exposed. Ah, there we are. Look at those tiny little beautiful dots of patina.
So cool.
So what happened was my first layer of paint was permanent. So those colors didn't go anywhere. When I added my second layer, it didn't matter that I put the metallic. It does not mix with that other layer because distress paint is permanent when dry. So my first layer was dry. When you put on your next layer, it is wet. And while it's wet, it's water reactive. So I added water, and the bigger the drips, the more that paint stayed wet. The smaller the drips, the smaller the areas. Then I went in with heat because I needed to dry the rest of the paint. If I would have just added water and put a paper towel, it would peel off everything because that metallic paint was not dry yet. Does that make sense? Then all I did with that paper towel is it literally just absorbed those puddles of water. So that's why if you were to brayer it and that water kind of oozed out, you would just have a bigger blob. Not a horrible thing, just a bigger blob. But we're not done with it. To me, this is the reveal, but it's not the final, okay? So now you can clean up. Now you can, try to get rid of this metallic stuff. You may need probably a little sanitizer at this point because metallic, the reason I said it has to be metallic is because the metallic distress paints are different. They have a different base to them. So they're almost a little elasticy, I guess. And that's why this works with the metallic and the regular colors. You can still lift off regular colors, but it won't do those big blobs like I did. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. Okay, so once we have our base, that's our foundation, we're gonna add some ink to it. Let's see, what colors of inks did I might not have even brought the right colors because I didn't, yeah, I can do it. No, I'm fine. I'll do it with those colors I brought over. Thanks. I'm just drying this because I don't want that metallic to be wet at all. Okay, next what you're gonna do is take some Distress ink pads. I would suggest Distress ink over anything else, like over a spray, over an oxide. It's just gonna provide you the best finish, but if that's all you have, do what you have. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to carefully apply ink, kidding, to the tag. Just squish it. You don't need a blending tool. You don't need anything. Just, you want to get some ink on there, and you want to get a lot of ink on there, okay? Scorched timber, really dark, beautiful color. So I work from light to dark because you won't contaminate your ink pads by going that route, so you're good to go. Then take whatever tool you want to use. What do I want to use? I think I'll use,
Whatever you do,
I'm
do it carefully.
gonna take this off. Well, I like to make light of it because, at this point you're like, oh, I should carefully blend in brown. No. We want to just get some ink on there. And now I'm just taking, I did put a clean foam on there. This is dome. I want to just pounce that ink all over this. I want to cover it all. Okay. And I know right now we kind of like lost the magic, but that's okay. It'll show itself soon. So same thing, I have different shades of brown. I have walnut stain, which is kind of in between gray brown, scorched, which is really, really dark, brush corduroy, but it could be vintage photo, gathered twigs, it could be whatever you have. But put those ink colors down and go direct from the pad so you get enough ink on there. See how shiny that is? That's gonna make a big difference because it's gonna give you more contrast for our next step. So now I'm just gonna clean this, take that, wipe this off. Okay, here's what I have. So what I'll tend to do is I'm gonna lift off some ink here and there. So I'll go in with a dry paper towel first and just try to take off any excess because I did put so much ink on there. See? And then we're gonna go in with water. So I didn't wipe it off, I just dabbed some of the excess. And now I'm gonna go in with water. So this is where we wanna create that little squirt gun thing. If you have trouble with your sprayer doing that, you just need to just go slower on the trigger. Slower on the trigger because we're just letting drips happen, okay? That's really the idea. And you could do this in stages. You don't have to do all this. It's not like the first part, like now you're in the clear. You could do a little bit, take it off, put a little bit, take it off. Every time we add water, it's going to take off a layer of ink. So I'm gonna go back to a paper towel. I'm gonna lift some of that off. I'm gonna dry it just for a little bit. I'll go in and dab some of this off. And we start revealing the patina. And the patina now, in my opinion, takes on a different depth than it did the first time. Because the first time, it was green, you know, wherever that dot was. But now that we have that ink, you see how we have like some dark areas and light areas? That's just from the water over, oh, that wasn't dry. That's just from the water over the spot. So I'm just gonna dry this, we'll do it again. Could you use a splatter brush? Yeah, splatter brush, paintbrush, your hands, your fingers. Dip your fingers in a bowl of water and flick it, go for it. It's just the water is now gonna break through the ink, revealing the paint, because now we know both of our layers of paint are dry and the paint is not gonna re-wet. The ink, however, will. Totally looks like a copper patina. So after this is dry, I'll look and go, oh, you know what? I wanna do that again. So I can do that again. And if I wanted to go back and ink it again, I could ink it again. You could do all of that stuff again, but the paint part, that game is over. That train has left the station. Like, you're not doing that. Beautiful. There's our tag. And you might be thinking like, okay, well, what's the whole point of this? Like, what are we doing on this? Why would we want this? Well, this could be anything. Besides that, it looks like a piece of metal. If you could die cut something and it literally looks like you die cut out of a piece of metal, you can see that our first layer of paint, when I told you not to worry about it, now you see why. But see, in your head, you're like, oh, the green and everything looks splotchy. But see why I need those little hints of light? Because I knew that if they revealed, they're gonna really glow and pop. You can see why I wanted some areas that were more saturated with color, because that area is gonna look different than that area, If you're working with stuff, you can, let me find some pieces where I've actually used these. So both of these started out just like a tag, only it was just, we have mixed media heavy stock in sheets. I did this technique and ran it through embossing folders. Same thing. It's just when you emboss it, it's like, it takes on a whole new reality to what that piece of paper is, right? Has such a cool finish. And the more you do this, the more like, see, these are much more bluer, much more turquoise. This is way more verdigris, green patina. But you'll know, like, hey, I like these colors, and hey, I want a lot, like on this piece, I want a lot revealed. So when you're adding that water over the metallic, you don't mind big puddles because you know what's going to reveal the background. But it's very cool to see this kind of metallic look totally transform. And these are much darker because you could even go over this with archival. If you wanted this to even be darker, we could use like an archival ink to go over it, and the archival will sit and dry over that paint to tone it down. So many options, but pretty cool, right? Great technique. That's Eroded metallic. Try it, master it, love it. It's a lot of fun. Okay, moving on. I like how one thing kind of rolls into the other. I hope you guys are having fun. Speaking of embossing folders, does it make a difference if you emboss before or after the painting technique? It absolutely matters, because I don't think you'll be able to get the paint on, like if you had your paper pre-embossed, I think when you had to do that metallic layer, it would miss so many different things, or maybe build up on the texture that your paint would be really sludgy. So my opinion would be to do the paper first and then emboss it, just because Well, you saw kind of the complexities. Why add another one? But you could still, I mean, again, try it. It might work better for you, but I just think in my brain right away, like all of these little wells would just hold so much of that metallic paint that when I'm using the water and try to blot it off, I'm not going to be able to blot off the surface, the down surface down there. So these are just embossed papers. So I'll just talk about these papers because these are all done with the same kind of paper. But it's a very cool way that you could take paper and just alter it with paint. But I love the question. So listen, when I answer the question, even though it's not maybe the answer that you were hoping for, I hope it still answered the question of why I don't think it would work. But don't ever think like, oh gosh, shouldn't I ask that? Of course you should. Finishes. Finishes with paint, whether it's on wood grain, whether it's on regular, any kind of painty backgrounds are very cool. Like this patina one, so simple. I'll show you how to do that. This is just paper. What I need to tell you though, is that the paper I'm showing you is all been retired. It's just what it is. But on the bright side, some of it's coming back. So all of my metallic Kraft-Stock, this is a paper I did with Ideology. It's all 100 weight cover. So it's a very thick metallic, but it's printed in metallic. There's a classic one that has all these different shades of copper and bronze and champagne and gold and even black, onyx black. Then we did just bright metallic colors. We did jewels, we did confections. All of this is retired. So when it's gone, and it won't be coming back in a vault release or anything like that. It was just, the problem is all of these colors in a pack just became very expensive to sustain inventory on. So it's gone. However, later this year, gold and silver in this paper will return, where it would just have a pack of like 12 gold, 12 silver, because I didn't want to give this up altogether. I just understood that they couldn't maintain all these multi-packs. So if you like the multi-packs, great, but just know that at the end of this year, gold and silver will be in its own pack and it'll return, and at least that could stay. I'd rather do that than have nothing at all. So that's kind of for me. So here's how it starts. I started by embossing this. So to the person that asked the question, can you emboss first? This technique, yes, you should emboss first. It looks pretty cool. So what I did is I just took a piece of metallic Kraft-Stock. Again, it's Kraft with a metallic printed finish, so it's not foil. And then we get some cool effects. And it doesn't look like much, but it's going to do some cool things depending on what you're going to use. So this stuff that looks like metal, like those old typewriter keys and all that, the ingredient, quite basic, and that is just black paint. Now, I'm going to be honest. Do you have to use black distress paint? You do not. Try whatever black paint you have. You might like distressed black paint better because it's wetter and it gives you a longer working time, but I don't want you to think for a second that you have to use this particular paint. I know people have used other brands where they've added water to it and made it thinner. Do what's going to work for you, okay? For me, let's see. What do you want to do? You want to do this one? We'll do both of them because they're both here. I'm just going to take some black soot distress paint. You're going to see that this paint is very fluid. So it's almost like ink. That's why I said it's really cool for this technique. Then we'll take our tool. I'm just going to use that same, even though there's ink, paint, ink, it'll cover each other up. Doesn't matter. And I'm just going to dab that paint into that texture. So I'm not really blending. Could you do this with a brush? Sure. Brayer, no, because it would only hit the high points. The goal is to try to get paint like down in the recess. But the paint sits on this metallic paper for a while. So this is another one that it's a timed technique, but certainly not as timed as that last one of eroded metallic. Okay, pounce, pounce, pounce. Done. Okay, we've got paint on there. So here's what we have. We have wet paint. This is where when you do it, you'll understand. We want this to be dry, but not completely. Can't be this wet, can't be totally dry. Could you use a heat tool? You can. You risk over drying, but if you could use a hair dryer, you could use a fan, but this is something that don't walk away from it and come back in an hour because then it won't work. So the paint needs to start drying. I'm going to use a heat tool, but I'm going to go from way up here. So I'm probably, I don't know, about a foot away. I'm not right on the surface because I don't want to dry any particular section. And it doesn't take long at all. I agree, Zoe. Champagne was my favorite. I could only pick 2 metallics in that pack. And I was like, do I do gold and silver? Do I do copper and champagne? I'm going to start with gold and silver. And you know what? If that works out well and it sells, maybe then we can get a pack of like champagne and copper. Don't know. But it's just the nature of manufacturing. You know, sometimes things become very expensive through the years that maybe weren't when it first came out, you know? Okay, so here's what I want you to try to test for. We want to test that this paint feels tacky, and it does. So then I'm just going to go in with a dry paper towel, and I'm just going to start clearing this away. Okay? And you could be aggressive. Dry paper towel, like be aggressive. I know there's like a cheer, I think, even that. How do I know that? Rando. So I'll show you on this one. Well, I can't do it because this one's already starting to dry. I got to do this one too. See, this is what you get for showing off and trying to do two at once. Do not recommend two at once, but hey, I'll be okay with it. I'll actually use a sanding disc on this one. That'll be all right. Because I want to show you like what you're looking for and what could happen. Actually, this turned out freaking cool. Okay. So you can see on this that where the paint is still tacky, it removed it down to the base. Where the paint dried, it didn't matter how much I scrubbed it, it's on there. It's not coming off. Even if you added water, it doesn't matter, okay? So that part, same thing. Where it was still tacky, great. Where it dried too much, it stayed black. So that's why I was saying like heat tool is not your best friend or working 2 for 1, but I'm gonna be okay with this. I'm gonna make it work because we could do some other things. What I'm gonna do on this one is I'm gonna take a sanding disc. So sanding discs are these little sandpapers that have fabric on the back that work on a blending tool. Pretty great. I don't want to sand directly on my glass mat, so I'm just going to place it down over something. But I can use it like a blending tool, and I can just, this is just going to give me a whole different finish over that black area. It's going to sand off some of that metallic paper, and it's going to allow me to add a color. And this I'm just going to leave because I like it. This one I like it, so I'm just going to leave it as well. But by sanding it, I can go in and add something. I can add another paint. I could add an ink. Let's see, what do I want to do? Let's take a little bit of, what color? I could do some evergreen bough. Just going to go directly with evergreen bough over that. You'll see what I did. Just to kind of hit those areas. Beautiful. And look at that patina we got. So what happened was, this is metallic paper. It's printed. Remember, it's a metallic printed paper. When you sand over it with the disc, because it's flat, even though you're going in circular motion and you're only going to hit the high points. And that's going to expose, it's going to sand off this metallic and expose the craft core. Exposes that. Then when you go over it with ink, the ink is going to highlight. And actually metallic has a white base before it hits the craft. So this ink, it has to, in order to get the color, they actually flood it with white and then flood it with metallic to create that shine. So if you just give it a little skippity bit, you'll hit that white core, and that's what I did. So like that's patinaed and it goes into the metallic. It's beautiful. Simple, right? Very, very easy to do that. But let's say we wanted to create a patina look with paint. Okay, these two are the same papers. Crazy, right? Both Kraft-Stock. This is the black one that's also retired. This is in the classic pack. It's pretty awesome because it creates like such a fab patina. So amazing. All right. So for this one, we're just going to go and we're going to do paint, but I'm not using black, so I'm just going to have another piece of foam. Let's do flat. And for this, it's whatever color paint you want to be the patina. So maybe in this instance, I'll do, how about salvage patina? That sounds good. So I'm going to take some salvage patina paint, put that right over the top of it, work this in. And you could leave it really at any stage. Just like that. This one, do not use heat for this. It's just going to go too quick because this is different than, remember, black was really a thin paint, so it gave me more open time. This one, not so much. So this one, I'm just going in. See, that's already perfect. So then we'll take a paper towel. I'm going to add just a touch of water to this one because this paint is just a bit, it's just not black. It's chalky. It has pigment. So it's just going to allow me to be a little more gentle, but also reveal some of that black. So I'm just lightly swiping just over that with my paper towel in different directions. And there's my patinaed finish. Shut up. Come on. So good. And it still gives you like this, I don't know, like it's like a chalky finish. I don't know if you can see that. It just has that little haze over the top of it. Isn't that cool? So the more surface you have, the more black that's going to show. This was all texture, so that paint really got to absorb into that texture. So I love that. See, paints are fun. Like paints are one of those things where, like I mentioned at the beginning, you know, if you guys have been here from the start, the thing about distress paint, it was designed for technique. It was designed to play with all the different surfaces and tools and things that you can do with it. And a lot of times people go, it's just like craft paint. Well, you could use it like craft paint. Absolutely. You could take it and just dip a brush in and paint and have a nice day. But if you try these techniques with craft paint, you're not going to be as lucky on that side. So that's really the difference. Okay. So I add a little water here. All right, let's wipe this away. We're going to talk about spritz, stamping, embellishments, and we'll wrap this up. Just now hitting like, hard to believe the 2-hour mark is already here. Not that it's timed, but okay. Stamping. Can you stamp on paint? Yes. What is the best ink to stamp with? Something permanent. Okay. Stamping on this with distress ink or oxide is not a good idea. So if you want to stamp on your painted background once it's dry, and when I say painted background, I mean anything. I mean this, or these, or any of these, anything that you use paint on, or even if you go direct with the paint, you want to stamp with something that is going to be permanent and waterproof. So archival or VersaFine Clear. I'll talk about the difference because I do love this ink. It's a great black ink, but it is a bit more on the wetter side. So this one is Black Soot Archival. This one is Claire Nocturne. Really great detail with Archival. See in the text and like the little wings. Nocturne's just a little different on this. It's not bad at all, but it's much, I don't know if it's like oily or greasy. So it wants to slide and it wants to kind of do this suction when you pick it up off the paint. This one just stamps like regular paper because Archival is just a different oil base. This one dried with a heat tool in about 30 seconds. This one dried with a heat tool in about 4 minutes, which was interesting. So maybe it has to cool. So my point is, if you're going to stamp in this on paint, just give it extra drying time. You know, like don't think it's going to dry in a minute. Use your heat tool and maybe set it aside to dry. If you're looking for something that has a little bit more refined detail, I would go with Archival. But if you like the intensity, I would go with Nocturne. See, that's why we have different ink options in our world, because it depends on what we want in that moment. But any permanent ink, anything that's waterproof will work great on the paint and dry. Just your drying times might be a little different, okay? Then we'll talk spritz real quick. Just to say that it does, okay? So Distress Spritz, it is a mica with a clear base. It is designed to spritz on. It's not designed to flood on. If you ever spray and saturate with spritz, you'll get quite a bit of fluming, meaning it will come off. But on this instance where it was spritzed on, it dries perfect over the paint, just like it does over the tag. So yes, spritz will work over any kind of painted background. If you use the spritz while the paint is wet, you will lose the spritz, okay? Because you have a pigment in paint and you have a pigment in spritz. And so if you mix these while they're wet, and when I say while they're wet, meaning let's say we were doing all those wet painty backgrounds and you're like, ooh, I'm gonna add some spritz into that wet paint. The paint will dominate the sheen and it will just look like granules of sand in your work. Maybe not horrible, but it just looks like granules of sand. So the nice thing about spritz is, remember, it's really like spritz might as well be sprinkles. It's a top coat. That's it. You spritz it on, like a little spritz over the top. Think of it as sprinkles, perfume, whatever you want, for just that you remember, like it's just that little touch, that little spritz of something. It's not meant to be a base colorant. It's not meant to be a mixative of some sort. It's just a topping, a creative topping, creative sprinkle, if you will, a little spritz. Okay, so yes, works great over paint and shows up beautifully. We doing all right?
Great.
Okie doke. All right, so let's get into some embellishments. We'll talk embellishments. This is easy talk. This is more show and tell than Q&A, so that's always good. So can you paint with paint? Yes, of course. That's where you see a lot of this stuff happening, like these salvage figures or anything resin or metals or anything like that. You can paint with the paint. So these are salvage figures. These start out, this is just a white resin, so it's a hardened plastic, and distress paint works great. No priming, no prepping, no nothing. Just the smallest paintbrush known to man and some patience. Let's see, see the paintbrush is so small that I don't even know where it is. Oh, here it is. It's this, it's that. That's the paintbrush. And that's a paintbrush compared to like a regulation paintbrush.
That is so small. Oh my gosh.
So just, it's a tiny paintbrush. It says it's a 3/0 spotter. I don't know. I'm not in the paint world. I'm not an artisan, but you can take a little bit and dip and just off you go. Paint and mica stain, same rules apply. You could use paint and mica stain. The mica stain, because it's a stain, won't dry on the paint because it's an ink. So, I mean, it would sit on the paint, but if you wet it, it would re-wet. But mica stain would be a top coat as well, but the stain will cover the paint, right? Unless you use it as a resist. So if you use mica stain on top of dry, I see a question that said, how about paint and mica stain? If you put paint down, let it dry, and then did mica stain, yes, the mica stain would resist the same way it did on this tag, because mica stain is essentially spray stain with mica. So it would give you this colorant with that sheen. So that would definitely be your workaround if you wanted that shiny stuff with paint. So yes, painting, oh, see, Dungeons and Dragons, yeah. It's not, like, once you get into it, I mean, I'm just saying, like, when you paint this, get into your groove, man. Like, this is one of those things that, like, pour yourself a glass of wine or put on some music or whatever for chill and paint your salvage figures or your small things, because it is very relaxing. But if you're in a rush and you need to do it, it'll drive you crazy. Like, yeah, those little Frozen Charlottes, it's just nice. And the paint dries beautifully. Then you can add some crayon over the top. This is glitter because the paint was permanent. We're able to put adhesive over the top, like resist spray or glossy accents or collage medium, and add glitter. There's many makers. I think Stacy and Michelle have done tutorials. I think maybe even Paula as well, of painting salvage figures. Many makers have. But it is great for any kind of plastic or any other thing that you have. Just know to take your time. But you don't need to seal it. You don't need to prep it. You don't need to prime it. You don't need to gesso it. You can paint directly onto plastics. But, you know, this is something that, will it scratch off? I would imagine if you use your nail or sandpaper, yes, but it doesn't rub off. It won't come off if you just touch it with your hands, or when they clink together, it doesn't come off, right? Same rules apply for metal. Any ideology metal, very simple to colorize any of your metal things. These could be brads, these could be eyelets, these could be frames, these could be charms, and all you do is put the paint on. If you want it to be distressed, put the paint on, shake it off. Okay, so you could easily, I think I even did a flourish here. I had some, like a flourish piece. Starts out metal. You just put the paint on, and very much like those embossing folders, you just kind of wait, and you're like, okay, this is good. I'll just start rubbing some of that paint off. Typically on a charm, I use my fingers to rub that off because I love getting that little burnished part of the metal. And then the dry paint stays in the area. And this, of course, is totally permanent. It's not going to come off. You can get it wet. It's not going to wipe off. But you can do some really cool things with any of these elements. This is the make I talked about at the beginning that Paula Cini did. And I loved it. I think she taught a class. And I'm like, can I have that, please? I love it. Because she just used paint in such a beautiful way. This is just an ideology backdrop. This is a piece of paper in the backdrops of the photo. We have several photos in backdrops, also a backdrop that she put on a vignette panel, did her cool stitching around it. But I just love this little cluster of embellishments, and they're all distressed with paint. So the little metal star, that's ideology, distressed with paint. The flourish, paint. Deco frames, paint. And what's crazy is, like, you know, these start out very shiny, but paint in different colors will give it such an amazing tarnish patina, even down into the words. Even a little splattering, it just sits on there, that little bit on the tag. It's a great use of that medium. So when you're working on things and you're looking at embellishments and you want to alter them, this is another great thing about having your palette of paint, because even if you don't have all the colors, you don't need all the colors if you're not going to use all the colors. You can mix the colors. You know, you can take a little tumbled glass and you can put in a little mermaid lagoon and make something similar to broken china. I mean, you have the ability to mix your colors, but it's getting these out and remembering to use them, because I think in our inky world of stamps and all of that, we tend to forget just how we can alter the everyday items that we have that really become customized for the work that you're doing. This little piece, I created this. This was inspired by a make Paula did years ago. This was, these are Photomatic, just ideology photos, just covered a vignette tray again. But this is that technique of that embossing folder with black paint. And I just use it as a trim because I wanted this to be very industrial. So this is that folder, silver, put the black paint on it, rub it off, but it gives it such a cool industrial vibe with all the photos. I did the same thing on that metal. That's a little crayon, that's some paint, that's some paint. There's a little paint. So it just adds a little touch of color and very punchy color on there. So just keep that in mind when you get all your little trinkety bits that you can do that. So let's see, I got one more thing that I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about brayers and stamping, and then we'll wrap up this Asked and Answered. So hopefully you guys are learning a bunch of things about paint. Maybe you're falling in love with it again, or for the very first time, right? Okay, stamps. So don't be afraid to use paint and stamps, but you have to be mindful of it. Take care of it. Like when you put paint on it, you want to make sure that you clean the paint off while it's wet. Otherwise, you're going to be using sanitizer and all the other things on your stamps. But stamps are tools, so they don't have to stay pristine. They can just be whatever they want to be. If you're looking for a great mixed media stamping, I do have 2 sets with Stampers Anonymous that were specifically for that. So this was kind of like, instead of stenciling or using a foam stamp, I love that this was rubber. And these just create great mixed media. So let's use a couple of those. Let's use that one. I'll use bubble wrap from this one. I'll use chicken wire from this one. I love these little bubbles. I love these dots, these little stripes. Maybe I'll use it from this one. I don't know. Okay. Then we'll start with that. Then I'll jump into another set. Okay. So that was mixed media 1 and 2. If I went too quick, let's see, 125 and 261. So what this tells me is that I needed to do 140 sets in between to prove that this idea was worthy. There you go. And is worthy. So there you go. So worthy that we did it again. So you can add these to blocks if you'd rather stamp. If it's mixed media, I love just to kind of keep the stamp a little fluid there, so you can do whatever you want to do. Let's do some tags. It could be tags. It could be watercolor paper. It could be craft. Honestly, it could be whatever you want it to be. So we'll start with some colors. My gosh, I've made a huge... No surprise, right, Mario, what kind of mess I make?
Yeah,
Always. Okay, let's do a little wild honey. Okay, so how do you apply paint to a stamp? Well, pretty much however you want. You could use a brush. Brush tends to get more paint in areas that you probably don't want it to be, because you're going to stamp with it. Stamping into paint, you could do that too, but here's a tip. If you really want to stamp into paint, take that paint, spread it out thin with your finger, then take your stamp and tap into that thin layer. This way you're just getting it on the surface of the stamp. So that's totally fine to do if you don't want to brayer everything. So here we can just take this, and I'm just going to roll that there, tap that in there, and roll that there. If I were to take that stamp and put it into the big drip, that would be a hot mess. All right, so here so I like to roll that because you just get more of an organic edge, if you will. So cleaning it off the stamp, like I said before, if you clean it off when it's wet, no problem. So maybe you have a stamp chamois or some sort of scrubby. This, I just put a little bit of water on a paper towel and I cleaned it off when it's wet. So I'm good with that. Perfect. This, clean it off while it's wet. But you could see that if you were doing this, you'd probably have many sheets of paper and you could just keep going and, you know, having a great time with it. Let's pick another color. Let's do something that's going to be a little bright. Man, can you tell I love salvage patina? Yes. Can I rewatch this video? Absolutely. All of my videos, you can go to my YouTube channel and they're all there, categorized. You can rewatch. The only difference when you rewatch is that there's no engagement. The comments from a live stream are locked after the live stream ends. So you can't really ask questions. And, you know, I try to watch the YouTube comments, but I don't really answer questions in there just because it could just get out of hand. You guys get that. All right, there's some dots. And this was done from bubble wrap. This is actually a piece of bubble wrap that I just scanned in. Thought it made a fun stamp. All right, so far so good. Cool. So really creating that's very, very simple. Okay. Does the technique work with acrylic stamps? Absolutely. It works with acrylic stamps. Same rules apply. You know, stamp it, clean it off. I think that rubber stamps are a bit more resilient to, you know, getting kind of grungy and mucky, but honestly, if clear stamps are what you have, use them. And you like this, then please use them. All right, let's do a little festive berries. Okay. Little dot. There you go. Spread it out. And I'll show a brayer. I just want to, you know, I don't like to mix application on the same thing because it could add confusion. All right, a little plus sign. Not fun. You can see that these stamp sets are just, they're crazy fun. And the fact that you get to like manipulate the stamp, you get that fade in, fade out thing. That's what I like about it. All right. No binders for stamps. I do see that. Like those, we tried, didn't we? Everyone knows we had them. I mean, we had them for a lot of years, and then we brought them back and we were so excited, but then the problem with the binders, they just didn't sell often enough, you know, because you get a binder and that fits 10 stamp sets. So by the time people needed another binder, it like sat around for so long and they just became more and more expensive to make, and it was over.
Right.
It was done.
The price just got to be so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
We're never
So
able to sell one.
yeah, because trust me, if we could still do it and they'd be affordable.
But you
We
can
would.
get one at the craft store. It's black, and I've seen it, and it works.
Oh, okay. Some little stripes. That's going to be fun. Did I have to use all these? I did. Why? Because I took them out. That's it. No other reason. Can paints be used with a better press? I don't know. I would think I think it would make a mess because I think most better press plates are detailed and they're meant for inks. And I think paint, by the time you painted the plate and you went through all that pressure, I think the paint would just ooze out and fill in all the gaps. So, I mean, I think it would work. I just don't think it would look great. So there's some painted stuff. Now let's do another one with a brayer. So these I'll put back. So for a brayer, let's just take another stamp. Let's do something like, we'll take this. We'll do a couple of alphabets. This will be fun. Something a little more detailed that maybe you don't want to tap in. Either way, it's going to work. But in this instance, I'll just take these stamps, and because I want to actually stamp them, I'll put them onto a block. We'll put that one on that, and we'll put this one on this. Okay, so we'll create kind of a text resist. You could use picket fence, which is white. You could use antique linen, which is cream. You could use weathered wood, which is kind of a gray blue. You could use pumice stone. If you want your text to kind of look a little ghosty, the lighter the better, okay? So I'm gonna go with some antique linen. It could be totally white, but I still wanna have a vintage vibe. Okay, shakety shake. This one I'm gonna need a little bit more paint than a drip. So maybe there's 4 drips. How about that for counting drips? We're gonna use a distress brayer. You can use any kind of brayer you want. Distress brayers really were designed for distress paint, but hey, this is not an infomercial. If you have a brayer that works and you're happy with it, great. 2 sizes, medium and mini, easy to clean. You just push this out and take the brayer underwater and clean it off. It's got little feet, so when you actually put the medium on the brayer, like let's say you were doing a gel plate or inking, you can set that down and the medium stays without touching the surface. For this, because these are small stamps, I'm going to use the smaller brayer. But if I had a bigger background stamp, I would use a bigger brayer. So I'm just going to smooth out this paint probably to the width of my brayer because I want to be able to get some medium on a stamp. And I'm feet up on the brayer. And I'm just going to roll this light-handed. So notice I'm not holding it with my index finger, because if you push, you're just sliding the medium. The roller's not actually moving. Just hold it from the back. Let that brayer roll across that paint and go back and forth until you can coat, for the most part, with some paint. And then we're just going to put this onto a stamp. I'm going to go back into the paint, go back into the stamp. And same thing, even when I'm applying it to the stamp, I'm really pretty light-handed on this. Set that down on the feet. Take that text, let's go here. Stamp with purpose, meaning you can give it your normal pressure, and lift. Okay, we're going to clean that off with water while it's wet. Spray. Off. Done. That's clean. Moving on. Let's do this one now. If you think you have enough paint, great. If you don't, reapply your paint. I think I'll have enough. And do you have to do the whole stamp? No, but this is already a fragmented stamp, so that's why I put it on the block. I don't have to try to get an organic look. It's going to already have one. Okay. And let's go here. Let's just go up the side. Stamp with purpose. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of times with stamps and paint, people think, oh, you have to be really light-handed because, you know, you'll make it all gooey. Not if you use a brayer. So that could work on the whole better press question, but honestly, you'd have to try that just to know. But a brayer is a great way to get clean, a light application of paint. All right. And then this, like I said, there's a lot of ways to clean a brayer. If the paint is still wet, you can actually brayer it through some water if you want, just to kind of get that paint wet. And then take a towel like this, pop out those wire ends, and just use the towel to just clean the paint off the brayer. You could use a baby wipe. So see, you don't have to take it to the sink if the medium is wet. It's an easy tool. Okay, let's clean this paint, and we'll go back to these tags and talk about stamped resist. Because there's a lot of cool things that we can do with paint and ink. And we can do this with a blending tool or sprays. I'm going to do sprays just because it's quicker. And I'm just making sure it's dry. It's dry. No paint, it's dry. Dry. There we go. So let's add some colors. This one, let's just be a little crazy. Let's go to Funville on this. This is going to be, we're going to do some, we'll be very colorful on this one. So I'm going to add some water because I want my ink to go. But remember, I added water to paint. Nothing ran because paint is permanent when dry. I used to do this in class and everyone would kind of chant in that moment because you would remember that it is permanent when dry. So I'm just using different colors of distress stain. This could be mica if you had mica stains and you wanted to use that. I'm just using some colors that I think we're just going to be kind of fun together. Obviously a pink, a yellow, blue, so I'll get overlaps of green and orange and purple and all of that. All right, just going to use a little bit of water just to move. I'm not really misting it. I'm just kind of doing the drippy thing. See, like that? So I'm just moving it like that much. That's another thing. I think when people use sprayers, sometimes way too much. Okay. So let's just move this around. This is one of those, whenever you do paint resist, panic sets in. I'm not going to lie. You know, you put the ink on there, you're like, oh my gosh, I've totally screwed this up. It's not going to work. The only thing I would suggest is, you see in this area where it's speckly, fleckily from the spray, a resist is going to look better when it has a fluid, solid background. So I just added a little water to knock down the speckles. This is screaming for a piece of paper, is it not? It really is. Is that going to happen? It is not, but it is. It would. Not today, but man, there's a difference between demoing and your own creative time, you know? Okay, let's get back to this. So do you have to use a heat tool? You do not. What's going to happen, the resist has nothing to do with the heat tool at all. And all I'm doing is I'm just kind of watching the colors, watching what moves. You know, if I see those little edges, sometimes I like them. Sometimes I'll just give it a little tap. If it doesn't come off and I really want that to come off, then sometimes I'll just take a paper towel and blot that off. But as this dries, here, just because I don't need those little side rails, those little guardrails. All right, let's keep drying this. We're going to do some different things. This one's color. The other one's going to be a little grungy. Shocker. Okay, again, if we can hold it up, let the heat pass through it. And on this instance, I'm like really about an inch away. That's what's cool about this craft tool. If you only have an embossing gun, that's okay. But if mixed media techniques are your jam, get yourself a heat tool. Ranger does them for all the different voltage for the world. So get one for your area, but I'm telling you, it makes all the difference when it comes to drying things because heat can pass through it. If you're sensitive to heat, get yourself a little pair of hot hands, you know, little silicone hands that can grip on, or use a clothespin that you can get close, because unlike an embossing gun, this does disperse the heat in a much larger radius. So, you know, you might be over here with your heat tool over here, but your thumb is on fire because it puts the heat out, but it's great. So just know that. So sometimes the hot hands work. Okay, here's what we have right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in with a damp paper towel, and I'm just going to start like revealing some of this paint. So it's just picking up some of that color, because the color will sit on the paint, and the thicker the paint, the more it resists. The thinner the paint, the lighter. So that's going to be our color. So there's our cool resistor tag. So see how just those colors come through? The red comes through, the blue. I just love how the colors still come through. And if you wanted more, you can just use that damp paper towel to pull off more ink. But I love that it's kind of hidden and go right over the top. Pretty neat. Okay. So the next one, the one that we did with some text, let's just add a lovely shade of brown. A little bit of, what else do we have? Oh, I only have one brown here. What is wrong with you?
What do you need?
No, thanks, Mario. He's ready. What do you need? I'm going to throw in, I'll throw in a little bit of broken china. Anything that you do with brown is still going to be just a delight. I might even use a little rusty. This could turn into a patina. I was trying not to, but hey, it might end up that way. I'll do a little cracked pistachio. So see, it is patina-y, but that's okay. Let's do a little bit there. Okay. I'm just going to stand this up a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit of water just to bring down the blend. Okay. And don't be afraid to like tap off some of the sides. It just gets a different kind of movement in there. And just let it start to dry. If you over soak your tag, so that's why I'm using a heat tool, you risk the ink soaking into the tag and actually soaking behind where you painted. So that could impact your resist. So I would say that, you know, if you like to get your ink on like I do, a heat tool is going to be best, because see how that resist is appearing? It appears when it dries, but if you let it like absorb, sometimes it soaks in so much of the paper that you lose the resist. And this resist with paint is not like a Versamark resist or an embossing resist where it's so in your face. It's supposed to be very, very painterly, very ghosty. Like that, where it just is so good. It's just so good how it fades in and out. That's why I like antique linen for that, because it appears white, but it's not as white as picket fence. All right, let's get some of that ink off of there. We're going to still add some water to this, of course, because that's what we do, just to create an effect. And we're going to add some spritz because, well, I want to do that too. So that I spritz those water drops on there. You see it? And then I used a heat tool. A heat tool on water drops will actually outline them. So now if I take the paper towel, those drips are definitely more prominent. So they really look like almost bleach, because that little bit of heat initially it's almost like it quickly created those outlines versus just lifting some little drops. So I do like that. Okay, let's do a little spritz. I'll call it in. How are we doing, Mario? Okay. Let's see what I want to do. Okay, this. Well, I have my spritz. You guys don't see it on camera, but I have my spritz tin. It's like in a pile, And so I pick a color and these all just rolled in. I picked another color to roll, and every time I went to grab it, it just rolled. Never mind. Okay. Distress Spritz. Shakety shake on the Spritz. People have a love-hate relationship with Spritz. I love it. I use it. I will say that I do fight with the whole clog thing. It's just inevitable for the formulation. If you take good care of it and you remember to shake it and you remember just to...
If not, just give it to me. I'll clean it.
Well, it could happen because Mario did that. But I do have to give a shout out to Ranger because I did say to them, like, look, guys, I know what I'm doing. I take care of them. I shake them. I store them upright. I don't store them on their sides. Like, I don't know what's going on here. I did find that, you know, sometimes from storing them laying down, if the end of the schnozzle is like in the air pocket, it tends to dry up and clog. But mine were stored upright and I'm like, I know what I'm doing.
But it is so random. It's hit and miss.
And I'm like, and it just clogs up. And I said, and buying 2 at a time is a bit annoying. So I do think, and I'm not sure, I mean, Simon says got them from Ranger as well, but I think it's what is it a bag of? Is it like a bag of 10 or something like that? Anyway, they're like, brings it down to maybe like 50 cents a piece. So very inexpensive versus the $1 or $2 a piece to replace it, because it does become the inevitable. Because you can clean them, but it's not fun. Let's see if this one's clogged. Oh no, see? All that hype for nothing. All right, so if you're gonna spritz, commit. If you want splatters, take this off and just tap the top of the schnozzle. Big difference in getting big drips of spritz versus a misty spritz, okay? So it just depends on what you want to do. Yeah, when Tim asks how are we doing, Mario, he never says anything, but we're doing good. Because that's a good thing.
We are.
Because he's got it. He covers the chat. Okay. It does. The clogging thing just happens, and it's like, it's so annoying. I've had times, honestly, where I've literally put a brand new one on, and I shake it, and I go to use it, and it's like, I get one shot. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. It is just because of the intensity of the pigment. I mean, we know why manufacturally, but I'm not changing it. So, like, it is what it is. That's what I said to them, because they're like, you know, we could put less mica in it. And I'm like, no, that's what I love about Spritz. I love that it's...
You have some that you've had the original sprayers.
Never had a problem with, and it's not even color related. It's moody. That's what I say. It's moody. Look at that. See, I mean, but that little spritz, see that little dusting? There's just nothing better. Because the thing about spritz, it's a mica, but it has no colorant in the base. That's what makes it different than mica stain. Mica stain is a dye, a stain with pearl. So if you sprayed it on, like if I sprayed blue, the whole thing would be blue and be mica blue. Spritz is only the color of mica. So like this, let me show you a bottle that's kind of laying down that I haven't shaken up yet. So like this Spritz, fossilized amber, it's all clear, see? It's all clear liquid, and all the pearl is right there. The rest of it's clear. And so once you shake it, you get that mica, and when you spray it on, it doesn't compromise the color. So like when you're looking at it, you see the same colors before you spritzed, but when the light hits it, you see that additional wow of whatever color spritz you put over the top of it. That's why I said, think of it as like creative sprinkles. It is just one of my, I can't believe how much I actually use spritz, because I wasn't much of a sparkly glitter guy, but it's not that. It just adds such a cool vibe to it, different finish. So anyway, that is stamped resist. Brayering, you can do a lot of brayer techniques. We could go on and on and on with paint, but I think I've talked enough. It was good fun. I mean, we really think about it. We've covered a lot of stuff, you guys. We've done obviously resist. We've talked, gosh, I just look over here at this pile. Mario keeps me so organized. We did textured backgrounds, painty backgrounds, eroded metallic backgrounds. We talked about texture paste and how you can tint them with paint or inks. We've done, well, there's another spritz right there. I love that background. See, that was a good cleanup background. That one turned out so good. That like kind of sherbet background. There's the ones we did at the very beginning. Let's see what other pile. Ooh. Here's our little paste. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one. And that is all. Good fun. Good fun.
You did really a lot of stuff.
Thanks.
A lot of stuff.
Asked and answered. Hopefully I covered that for you guys. I know that it's a lot because I just kind of riff off what's in my head and also what you guys ask during a live, but I hope you find this kind of format. That's why I don't do all of them like this, but I think it's a cool format because it does give you a chance. It's almost like old school days when I would be at a demo, right? Where you sit around and watch and you're like, hey, because that's the question that popped into your head. Just remember, you can go back and watch these whenever you want. You don't have to devote 2.5 hours to watch it in its entirety. Well, no, I think I timestamped these. I'll timestamp it over the weekend because the chat on the Asked and Answered actually stays, because I think it's important in this format that if you're rewatching it, you can see the questions that are asked, because a lot of times you guys answer each other's questions in the chat during these, which is great. So it'll stay up, but you can go back to the older ones and they're timestamped. So you could go to a specific technique, like try to break down questions and actually go to that particular section. So I hope these are fun. Thanks, Boo. It is like Carson. That's like, these are, when I was prepping, like, Mario said, what do you have to do for this one? I'm like, nothing. Like, I just have to have the product there. So whatever you guys ask or whatever's in my brain, I can kind of have at the reach, and he's always there to get it. So thanks, Mario. But it is super important just to become comfortable with the stuff that you've spent your money on. Okay. Play with it. It doesn't mean you need everything in every color, but maybe you'll find a medium where you do resonate with that, where you're like, you know what, I think I need to expand my palette, or you know what, I understand it more that I only need a few colors of this because I can use it with this. That's the goal of an Asked and Answered type video. The other ones that we do, maybe it's a product release, or maybe it has to do with the season. Those are more kind of fun makes, but just think of it like you just spent 2.5 hours in school. That's what I hope it is. And we will be doing more Asked and Answered this year. Gosh, we haven't done it on pencils yet. We haven't done it. I don't think we've done one on crayons yet. So yeah, you never know what we might do them on. It's pretty cool. So good fun. Thank you guys for spending your Saturday with us. Thank you for the chat. Welcome. And he comes over, you guys can't necessarily see, but when I see the questions, like he's over there, like, pointing so I can remember to do the questions. Cause yeah, I do just kind of get in my own head, and I love to just demo. It's just good fun.
You do love to demo. Your favorite part of your job.
Because it's
most favorite.
It's the thing that I will never let that spark go away. I remember, as we do, the first time we see embossing powder melt, or we see ink blended, or whatever that is. It's pretty fascinating. Cool.
So I love it. I learned really a lot of stuff today.
It is good fun. So thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. We'll see you again soon.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.